I was a special forces medic in my past life. I never cared about celebrities. I only admired real heroes. One of them was Mo Joy, a famous general from the Shun dynasty. He was the fiercest warrior of his time, but the emperor got jealous of his achievements and had him stripped of his rank and exiled. He died on the road before he could ever be cleared of the charges. I was visiting his memorial tomb when an earthquake hit. I could have escaped easily with my skills, but I stayed behind to save people. That decision cost me my life. When I opened my eyes again, everything had changed. I was in a wedding ceremony, bowing to heaven and earth, bowing to the elders, bowing to my spouse. My head was spinning, but memories that weren't mine started flooding in. I had transmigrated into ancient times, into the body of a woman who shared my name, Hijiran. She was the eldest daughter of the Minister of Revenue, and she had been engaged to Mo Joy since childhood. Mo Joy's family, the Duke Protector's household, had sacrificed everything for the country. Every man in the family had died in battle, leaving only Mo Joy as the last male heir. 5 years ago, when his final brother fell in war, he took command of the army at just 16 and held the entire household of widows together on his own. Now he had returned victorious, and the old matriarch arranged the wedding. But the original Hijiran had desperately tried to break off the engagement. She didn't want to end up a widow like all the other women in that family. Every Mo man died young on the battlefield. She fought and screamed, but her father was a man of principle and refused to cancel the marriage. In the end, her parents drugged her to get her into the bridal sedan. They misjudged the dose. She died inside the carriage, and that's when I took over. One thing confused me, though. In the history I knew, there was never any mention of Mo Joy having a wife. Maybe the original really did die in the sedan before the ceremony was completed, so it was never recorded. While I was lost in thought, my maid Chayu nudged me. The groom had arrived. A crowd pushed Mo Joy into the bridal chamber, and when he lifted my veil, I finally saw him. He was tall, around 6'1", with a strong, straight build. His face looked like it was carved from stone, sharp, handsome, and serious. He resembled the portrait I'd seen in his memorial tomb. His cold expression and piercing eyes gave off an intimidating pressure. This was exactly how I imagined my hero would look. I must have stared too long because he spoke first, his voice cold. Seen enough, that snapped me out of it. With all those people watching, he wasn't going to give me any face, so I wasn't going to flatter him either. Yeah, I've seen enough. Nothing special. The tension between us was obvious, and the sisters-in-law quickly jumped in to smooth things over, teasing us about drinking the wedding wine and having children for the Mo family. I'm not going to lie, even with my modern soul, I felt my face go red. I'd been single for 24 years in my past life, completely focused on serving my country. I never imagined I'd end up in a situation like this. I lowered my head to hide my embarrassment, which only made them tease me more. Then a servant's voice came from outside. "My lord, the emperor has sent a message summoning you to the palace immediately." My heart dropped. I grabbed Xiaoyu and asked her what today's date was. She looked at me like I was crazy and said it was the 8th day of the 7th month in the 19th year of Shenyuan. I knew it. If my memory was right, tonight the emperor would summon Mo Joy to the palace and frame him for sneaking into the imperial harem. They'd beat him with 100 strikes. Then the next day, they'd accuse him of treason and sentence the entire Duke Protector's household to have their property seized and the whole family exiled. I watched Mo Joy's figure disappearing into the night, and I made a decision. Since I was here now, I would do everything in my power to keep my hero alive. I jumped to my feet, ignoring my weak body and the confused looks from the sisters-in-law, grabbed my skirt, and ran after him. I ran after Mo Joy as fast as I could, calling his name. He finally stopped and turned around, his face completely blank. "What is it?" I was out of breath when I caught up to him. I grabbed his arm and tried to pull him back. He frowned and asked what I was doing. I didn't know how to explain that I knew the future, so I just said I had a bad feeling that going to the palace tonight might be a trap. I was ready for him to question me, but instead he asked, "What have you heard?" Turns out he'd already been sensing something off since returning to the capital. The emperor's attitude toward him felt fake. I couldn't exactly tell him I knew this piece of history, so I just stuck with my story about having a bad feeling. He didn't push it. He let me lead him around the courtyard. My eyes landed on the bridal sedan I'd arrived in, and I ran over and pulled out a thick cushion from inside. The original Hizuran was the pampered type. She hated bumpy rides, so her mother had a special cushion made for her. I squeezed it to check the thickness. It would do. I handed it to Mo Joy. If you believe me, strap this to your back. It might help. I paused, then added, and if anyone tries to lead you to the rear palace saying the emperor summoned you there, don't go. That was all I could do. Whether he'd escaped the beating depended on him now. He hesitated for a moment, then took the cushion. As he turned to leave, he said, "It's late. Don't wait up for me. Get some rest." I watched him walk away and couldn't help calling out one more time, "Don't forget to put the cushion behind you." He didn't answer. I headed back. When I returned to the courtyard, all 8 sisters-in-law and the youngest sister of the Mo family were standing there waiting. The sisters-in-law were experienced women, and they immediately tried to comfort me, saying the emperor probably had something urgent and Mo Joy would be back soon for our wedding night. They were so warm and kind, but I couldn't focus on any of that. Looking at these young women, I felt a wave of sadness. They were all so young and already widows. And soon they'd face something even worse, exile. I decided I had to at least try warning them. I told them I'd been having the same strange dream over and over, that our household would be raided and the whole family sent into exile. The eldest sister-in-law, Chui Biting, grabbed my hand gently and told me not to say such things. The Duke Protector's family had been loyal for generations. How could they possibly be punished like that? The second sister-in-law literally spat on the ground to ward off bad luck and told everyone to pretend they never heard it. I expected this reaction, but I wasn't giving up. I told them even if it was just a dream. It felt too real and kept repeating every night. There was no harm in preparing, just in case. They looked conflicted. The youngest sister, Mo Hanue, who had been sheltered and spoiled by all her brothers and sisters-in-law her whole life, was already on the verge of tears. She whimpered that she was scared and begged them to say it wasn't true. The eldest sister-in-law pulled the girl into her arms and told her not to worry. Dreams always mean the opposite. Then she suggested everyone let me rest since it had been a long day. I didn't know if anyone believed me, but I'd done what I could. Whatever happened next, I'd deal with it as it came. Back in my room, the maids helped me wash up, and I sent them all away. I needed quiet. I needed to think about my next move. By the candlelight, I could see the wedding room was filled with expensive decorations and gifts, but I had no way to carry any of it. So I focused on the one thing that was easy to take: silver notes. I didn't know how much money the Duke Protector's household had, but I knew the original girl's parents had put 2,000 taels worth of silver notes in her dowry. I threw on a robe and went outside. My maid Xiaoyu rushed over asking if I needed anything. I waved her off, told her I couldn't sleep, and just wanted to look through my dowry. She knew the original Hizuran's stubborn personality well enough not to argue, so she stayed put. The dowry chests had just been delivered today and were still sitting in the side room. I opened the one with the silver notes and counted them. Exactly 2,000 taels. Holding the notes, my first thought was, when the raid happens, they'll search everyone. Where could I possibly hide these where nobody would find them? If only I had one of those magical storage spaces like the transmigrated heroines in novels, I could just tuck the money away safely. But of course, life wasn't that convenient. Except, right as I was mentally cursing the transmigration gods for being unfair, the scene in front of me suddenly shifted. I was standing in a room I knew better than any other. It was my medical office from my past life. Was I not dead? That hope didn't last long. I tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. It was like a decoration, no gaps, no handle that worked. The windows were the same, sealed shut like they'd been welded. I figured it out pretty quickly. I really did transmigrate, and this medical office was my cheat, my golden finger. It was a personal storage space. I tested it out. I said, "Exit," and I was back in the side room with the dowry chests. Then I grabbed a chest and willed myself inside the space. It worked. I brought the chest in with me. I went back out and tried using just my thoughts to send the remaining dowry chests in. That worked too. Anything I focused on would vanish from where it sat and appear inside the space. The medical office wasn't huge. After I moved all the dowry chests in, they already took up a good chunk of the floor. I tried using my mind to stack them against the wall, and it worked. The space was surprisingly user-friendly. I didn't have to physically move anything. Just think it and it happened. Now that I understood how the space worked, I went back to the bridal chamber and sat on the bed to plan. If history was correct, Mo Joy would be carried back from the palace at dawn, beaten half to death and barely breathing. Less than 2 hours after that, the emperor would send soldiers to surround the estate and deliver the decree. Property seized, entire family exiled. I checked the clock in my space. It was 10 at night. That meant I had at most 10 hours before everything fell apart. I needed to make every minute count. I entered the space and dug through my things until I found a set of camouflage fatigues from my past life, the kind I used to wear on missions. I changed into them, tied my hair into a quick bun, grabbed my climbing claws and wire, then slipped past the maids and out of the courtyard. To get a layout of the estate, I climbed up a thick old tree. From the top, I could see that my courtyard was slightly to the west. The denser cluster of buildings was to the east, probably where the sisters-in-law and the old matriarch lived. Those rooms might have some personal valuables, but going door to door like a thief would take too long. What I needed was the main storeroom. I headed west instead. The Duke Protector's estate had serious security. I kept running into armed guards on patrol, and the further west I went, the more there were. Using the counter-surveillance skills from my past life, I made my way to a building that stood apart from the rest. It was larger than the other structures, and 2 guards were posted right outside. This had to be it. Something important was stored here. I picked up a pebble and tossed it into a nearby pond. The splash echoed through the quiet night. "Who's there?" The guards grabbed their weapons and ran toward the pond. I didn't waste a second. I rushed to the door, pulled a pair of fine-tipped tweezers from my space, and picked the lock in a few quick turns. Inside, it was dark, but in the faint moonlight, I could make out rows of shelving units lining the walls. I reached out and touched the nearest item, smooth and slippery like fabric. This was definitely the storeroom. No time to sort through anything. I used my mind to sweep everything into my space, every last item off every shelf. I left only the empty shelves behind. I'd just finished when the guards came back. "I told you, you're too jumpy." There was nobody there. We ran out for nothing. I heard something by the pond, I swear. It's frog season. A toad jumping into the water makes the same sound. Fine. Let's just get back to our post. Now I had a new problem, how to get out without them noticing. Then I remembered I had a brand new mini drone in my space. I climbed up to the rafters, carefully shifted a roof tile aside, and sent the drone out. Using the remote, I flew it to a spot far enough away, then switched on its laser light and sound emitter. The guards instantly locked onto the light and noise. What was that? An intruder? Let's go check. As their footsteps faded, I slipped out of the storeroom and locked the door behind me. I sprinted to a safe distance, climbed another tree, and used the remote to shut off the drone's light and sound. Without a target to chase, the guards eventually gave up and returned to their post. Tonight's been strange. Think something's going on. Should we report it to the Duke? Are you crazy? It's his wedding night. You want to be the one to interrupt that. Good point. We'll tell him in the morning. As long as the storeroom's secure, we're fine. Once I saw them fully relax, I dropped silently from the tree, guided the drone back to my hand, and tucked it into my space. I kept moving through the estate, dodging guards and collecting anything I could get my hands on. Every room I could slip into, I cleaned out and sent everything into my space. I'd expected the Duke Protector's household to be wealthy, but I was wrong. Apart from some colorful fabrics, some grain, both coarse and fine, and half a chest of silver ingots, there was almost nothing. Barely any antiques, paintings, gold, or jewelry. The mighty Duke Protector's family was practically poor. That told me everything about how honest and clean the Mo family had been for generations. And yet this was the family the Emperor wanted to destroy. It made my blood boil. The silver was maybe 10,000 taels at most. Far less than I'd hoped, but on a long exile road, anything was better than nothing. I kept going until my space was completely full, then finally headed back to my courtyard. I'd been out for over 2 hours. Xiaoyu was still faithfully standing guard outside the door, so I slipped in through the window and quickly changed out of my fatigues. I'd barely finished when I heard urgent footsteps outside. "What happened to the Duke?" Xiaoyu's panicked voice called out. I rushed out. 2 guards were carrying Mo Jui on a wooden plank, heading toward our room. "My lady, the Duke is injured. We're bringing him in and going for the doctor right away." They moved him onto the bed and left. Xiaoyu came to my side with red eyes, asking how he'd been fine just hours ago and was now unconscious. I told her to go wait by the gate and bring the doctor the moment he arrived. I needed her out of the room so I could examine him myself. Once she left, I moved the wedding candles closer to the bed. But the second I reached my hand toward him, Mo Jui opened his eyes. "I'm fine," he said. His voice was strong and steady. He clearly wasn't in bad shape. "What happened?" I asked. He shifted slightly and fixed those cold eyes on me. "How did you know the Emperor would set me up tonight?" On his way back, he'd been lying on that plank thinking it over. His best guess was that my father, Minister He, had known about the plot in advance, which would mean my father was working for the Emperor and I might be a spy planted in the Mo household. His gaze grew even more intense. Any noble lady from this era probably would have burst into tears under that stare. But I wasn't from this era. "I've been having the same dream for days," I told him calmly. "I dreamed you'd face this exact disaster tonight. Believe it or don't, that's all I've got." He looked into my eyes for a long moment. I could tell he didn't buy it, but strangely, he didn't press further. I asked if he was hurt and offered to check his wounds, since I knew some medicine. Instead of answering, he reached behind his back and pulled out the cushion I'd given him. It was torn in several places and stained with blood. "You still went into the rear palace? And they gave you 100 strikes?" I asked. "That's what the history book said." He shook his head slightly. "I didn't go into the rear palace. I refused like you told me. The Emperor charged me with defying an imperial order instead and gave me 50 strikes. He looked down at the bloody cushion and said, with real sincerity, "Thank you for the warning and the cushion. They saved me." He told me what happened. When they tried to lead him into the rear palace, he remembered my warning and refused, saying it was improper for a man to enter. The Emperor was furious that his trap didn't work, but he also knew that punishing Mo Jui for refusing to enter the harem would make the Emperor himself look bad if the truth ever came out. So he settled for the lesser charge, disobeying an order, and had him beaten 50 times instead of 100. Between the reduced beating and the cushion absorbing the blows, Mo Jui only had surface injuries. He'd faked being unconscious, so he could be carried home without raising suspicion. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "In your dream, did anything else happen?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I dreamed the Duke Protector's household will be raided and the whole family exiled." His eyes went wide. "Raided and exiled," I nodded. "If the timing is right, it happens tomorrow morning. After court begins, officials will accuse you of treason. They already have fabricated evidence prepared." He didn't question me nearly as much as I expected. "I think after tonight, being summoned to the palace for no good reason and beaten for a made-up charge, my warnings didn't seem so crazy anymore." He'd already sensed something was wrong. He went quiet, thinking hard. Then he looked at me. "Send someone to tell my mother and the sisters-in-law that I came back from the palace badly injured and unconscious. They'll rush here to see me. Once everyone is gathered, I'll tell them what's coming." I didn't know why, but Mo Jui had decided to trust me. A woman he barely knew. He had the same mindset I did. Better to prepare for the worst and be wrong than to do nothing and be caught off guard. I agreed that Mo Jui should be the one to break the news. His words carried far more weight than mine. I sent servants to each courtyard to bring everyone over, then went back inside. I asked him if he had any plans. His answer was simple. He wanted to write divorce letters for all the sisters-in-law and for me, so we could leave before the disaster hit. The fewer people dragged into this, the better. I didn't argue with him. Those women were kind and good-hearted. They were already young widows. Making them suffer through exile on top of that felt cruel. As for myself, I wasn't worried about my own safety. I felt for the Mo family, and more than anything, I wanted to use whatever I had to change Mo Joy's fate and keep him alive. Soon, the old matriarch and all the sisters-in-law arrived. I could see their concern for Mo Joy was genuine. No one was faking it. Old Madame Mo came to her son's bedside first. Her eyes were wet, but she held herself together like the strong woman she was. "Joy, how bad are your injuries?" "Mother, it's nothing. Just surface wounds." Fourth sister-in-law asked why he was hurt at all. Mo Joy glanced around the room and said he'd explain everything once everyone was here. When the last few sisters-in-law arrived, I stepped outside and ordered the servants to guard the door and not let anyone in. Mo Joy noticed that, and I could tell he appreciated the caution. He took a deep breath and told them everything. "Mother, sisters-in-law, the Emperor singled me out tonight and had me beaten 50 times. From what I can tell, he's determined to get rid of our family. A decree is likely coming soon. At best, exile. At worst, execution." He said it bluntly, even making it sound worse than it might be, hoping the sisters-in-law would choose to save themselves. All 8 of them turned and looked straight at me. They remembered. I'd warned them about the same thing just hours ago in the bridal chamber. They'd brushed me off as a superstitious bride talking nonsense. But now, hearing it from Mo Joy himself, they couldn't ignore it anymore. I met their eyes and gave them a firm nod. I wasn't making things up. Old Madame Mo's composure cracked. "Are you certain, Joy?" 9 out of 10, mother. Her body trembled. "The Mo family has been loyal for generations. Our men gave their lives for this country. And this is what we get." Then she laughed bitterly. "I told your father to retire. I told him no amount of glory was worth more than keeping the family safe and together. But he wouldn't listen. He said protecting the Shun dynasty was the Mo family's mission. That one sentence cost me my husband and 8 sons. And for what? To guard an empire that turns on us? What a joke." The sisters-in-law were just as furious. Some wanted to rush to their birth families for help, to have their fathers or brothers speak up on behalf of the Mo household. Mo Joy shook his head. "It won't work. The Emperor has made up his mind to destroy us. No one's words will change that." 7 sister-in-law refused to accept it. "So, we just sit here and wait for them to slap a fake charge on us." Mo Joy didn't answer her. Instead, he turned to his mother. "Mother, rather than let the sisters-in-law be punished alongside us, I think we should give each of them a divorce letter. Let them go free." Old Madame Mo thought for a moment and nodded. "You're right. They've suffered enough as widows. We can't drag them down with us any further. And Hijiron too, she just married into this family. It would be unfair to make her pay for our troubles." That's when the room erupted. First sister-in-law spoke up immediately. "Mother, 9th brother, I don't want a divorce letter. I, Chui biting, am a Mo family woman in life and a Mo family ghost in death." Second sister-in-law was right behind her. "Even if they execute the entire family, I, Xiafong, will stand beside you to the very end, one by one." Every sister-in-law refused. They would stay. They would share the family's fate, no matter what that meant. Old Madame Mo turned to me. "And you, Hijiron?" "I'm staying too," I said without hesitation. The old woman looked at her son. "You see, Joy? Every woman in this family has made her choice. I won't deny them that." Mo Joy looked around the room, and for the first time I saw something like admiration in his eyes. "Sisters-in-law, you only get one life. If you can live, why choose death? Please don't make this decision out of pride." First sister-in-law cut him off. "My mind is made up. Don't say another word." The others echoed her. Not a single one changed her answer. Old Madame Mo knew these women well. They might bicker over small things on a normal day, but when it truly mattered, none of them would run. That was what it meant to be a woman of the Mo family. Old Madame Mo took charge right away. "Since everyone's staying, we need to prepare. If it's execution, there's nothing we can do. But if it's exile, we'll need money to survive the road." Sixth sister-in-law spoke up first, saying she had 300 taels saved. Eighth sister-in-law admitted sheepishly that she'd spent most of her allowance on snacks, but she had some decent jewelry she could sell. The others chimed in with whatever valuables they had. Mo Joy and I exchanged a glance. We both knew the problem. The sisters-in-law had personal belongings, not silver notes. When the raid happened, the soldiers wouldn't let anyone walk out carrying jewelry and valuables. The whole point of raiding a household was to take everything. Mo Joy said it plainly. Sisters-in-law, I know you mean well, but there's no time left to convert those things into silver notes. That hit them like cold water. Sixth sister-in-law got so frustrated, she cursed out loud, saying she'd rather die than let those bastards take their things. Mo Joy didn't have an answer either. That's when I stepped in. Mother, sisters-in-law, I suggest everyone sew a small pouch into your underclothes. Wrap your silver notes in cotton and tuck them inside. Cotton is soft enough that even if someone pats you down, they probably won't feel it. As for everything else, we'll figure that out with whatever time we have left. Old Madame Mo agreed immediately and told everyone to go prepare. The sisters-in-law hesitated. The doctor still hadn't come to treat Mo Joy, and they didn't want to leave him. But the old matriarch knew this wasn't the time for sentiment. She put on her stern voice and ordered them to move. Once they left, old Madame Mo asked why the doctor was taking so long. One by one, the servants sent to fetch doctors came back with excuses. Every single imperial physician had refused to come. I could figure that out with my toes. The emperor didn't want Mo Joy to recover. He probably wanted him to die before even leaving the capital. Mo Joy didn't look surprised at all. He just reassured his mother that his injuries weren't serious. Old Madame Mo was no fool either. She could see her son was managing, so she left to make her own preparations. I walked her out, then came back to the room. Using my sleeve as cover, I pulled 2 servant contracts from my space, one for Xiaoyu and one for my other dowry maid. I told Mo Joy that when the exile order came, we wouldn't be allowed to bring servants. I wanted to return their contracts and set them free. He agreed without argument. Do what you think is best. He was about to say something else when a guard burst in, panicked. My lord, the storeroom has been robbed. Everything is gone. Nothing left but empty shelves. Right behind him, first and second sister-in-law rushed in too. They'd gone to the kitchen to prepare dry rations for the road, and found the kitchen completely cleaned out as well. Ninth brother, we've been robbed. Hearing them call the thief out like that, I felt a twinge of guilt. After all, I was the thief they were talking about. But I let it go quickly. I wasn't stealing for myself. Everything I took was for the family's survival. Mo Joy looked genuinely confused. The estate was still fully guarded. How could someone clean out the entire storeroom without making a sound? His instincts kicked in, and I could feel his gaze shifting toward me. He waved the guard away, saying he'd investigate personally. First sister-in-law asked about the kitchen, and Mo Joy shrugged it off. The food's gone? Good. We couldn't take it with us anyway. Better some thief gets it than it ends up filling the emperor's treasury. She actually nodded at that logic, and the 2 sisters-in-law left. Now it was just the 2 of us. Mo Joy's sharp eyes locked onto me and didn't move. I stared right back, without flinching. After a long silence, he spoke in a low voice. All of this has something to do with you, doesn't it? It was phrased as a question, but his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. Even with all my training from my past life, staying calm under any pressure, I didn't know what to say. His tone left no room for denial.
He was completely certain it was me.
How was I supposed to explain this? We barely knew each other. I couldn't exactly tell him I had a magical storage space inside my head. While I was still trying to figure out how to dodge the question, Mo Joy spoke again. Everyone has secrets. If you don't want to tell me, I won't force you. My family is already in a terrible situation. My mother and sisters-in-law are pitiful enough. I just hope you don't have any bad intentions toward them. I understood him completely. My behavior had been bizarre. Knowing the future, the storeroom being cleaned out without a sound. He couldn't afford to gamble with his entire family's lives. He was basically begging me. Even if I had some hidden agenda, please spare the innocent women. I mean no harm to the Mo family. I told him. You have my word. Then I thought about it more carefully. The exile road would be long. Sooner or later I'd need to pull supplies out of my space, and I couldn't spend all my energy inventing excuses every single time. Plus, Mo Joy was too sharp. Fooling him wouldn't be easy. So I gave him a partial truth. Everyone has secrets. I have mine, and I'm sure you have yours. I've already told you I mean no harm. So I hope you can respect me enough not to dig into my secret. But I'll be honest, the storeroom theft was me. I didn't want to leave those things for the Emperor to seize. Having supplies on the road will make exile easier for everyone. That was as much as I was willing to say. If he kept pushing, I'd walk away. I was confident in my abilities. I could survive anywhere. I didn't need to stay here offering help only to be suspected and interrogated. After a long silence, Mo Joy said, "I promise I won't ask about your secret again." His instinct told him I wasn't lying. Everything I'd done had been to help the family, not hurt them. Whatever method I'd used to move all those goods, he swallowed his curiosity and let it go. We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked me something I didn't expect. "Since you can empty a storeroom without making a sound, if I took you somewhere much wealthier, could you clean that out too?" My eyes lit up. My space was packed, but most of it was random household stuff. On the exile road, what we'd really need was money. More silver meant more options when things went wrong. "Where do you want to take me?" I asked. He could tell from my tone that I was in. "The Imperial Treasury. If you can take the goods, I can get us inside." The Imperial Treasury? I was stunned. This man's appetite was even bigger than mine. He wanted to rob the National Treasury. The problem was my space. It was tiny. There was no way it could hold everything in there. He noticed my hesitation.
What?
"You don't dare?" "It's not about daring. I'm just thinking about where to put it all." "Put it?" He almost asked a follow-up question but caught himself. "You said you wouldn't ask," I reminded him. "You're right. I apologize." He backed off immediately. I had to give him credit for that. I checked the clock in my space. It was already 2 in the morning. Time was running out. "Wait here a moment," I said. I went to the side room and entered my space. As much as it pained me, I pulled out all the less important items and dumped them on the floor. The room was a mess of random goods piled everywhere. It hurt to let go of that stuff, but trading it for what was in the Imperial Treasury was worth it. I went back to the bridal chamber. Mo Joy was still sitting on the bed. "Can you walk?" I asked. He got up and put on his shoes without complaint, but the way his brow tightened for a split second told me the pain from the beating was still very real. "I know some medicine. Let me check your wounds first," I offered. "No need. We have to hurry." He opened the wardrobe and pulled out 2 sets of black night clothes. He tossed one to me and put on the other. His clothes were too big on me, but they didn't slow me down. He grabbed a flexible sword from the wall, took my hand, and we jumped out the window together. The moment my feet touched the ground, my body was airborne again. The hero that history praised for centuries was the real deal. His lightfoot skills were incredible. In just a few leaps, we were already beyond the estate walls. In my past life, I thought I was pretty good in a fight, but everything I knew was close combat technique. Compared to Mo Joy's real martial arts, I wasn't even close. While I was busy being impressed, he landed us in a rundown courtyard. I whispered, "This is the Imperial Treasury." He didn't answer. Instead, he led me to a room in the corner, walked to a crumbling brick bed, and pulled away a few bricks. A deep, pitch-black hole opened up beneath. "This is a secret tunnel to the Treasury," he said quietly. I desperately wanted to ask how he knew about this place. But I'd just made him promise not to pry into my secrets, so I figured I owed him the same courtesy. I swallowed the question. I followed him into the tunnel. He clearly knew this passage well. Even in total darkness, he moved through it without hesitation, never needing to feel his way along the walls. After about 10 minutes of walking through the tunnel, Mo Joy pushed open a trapdoor above us, and suddenly we were standing inside the Imperial Treasury. It was incredible. The place was enormous, filled with treasures everywhere I looked. Every single item seemed priceless. 2 massive luminous pearls lit up the entire vault bright as daylight. They nearly blinded me. "We don't have much time. Move fast," Mo Joy said, noticing me staring with my mouth open. I felt like a country bumpkin who'd never seen anything nice before. Everything in here was stunning. But he was right. This wasn't a sightseeing trip. I need you to step away for a moment, I said. He understood immediately. I didn't want him watching how I worked. Without a word, he climbed back down through the trapdoor and closed it behind him. I made sure there wasn't a single crack before I started. My space was limited, so I had to be smart about what I took. I used my mind to sweep up all the silver notes, silver ingots, gold, jewelry, and precious gems first. I checked my space. Just those items alone had nearly filled it. But I wasn't satisfied. I rearranged everything tighter, shoved smaller items into the kitchen and bathroom areas of my medical office, and freed up a bit more room. Then I grabbed some scrolls and paintings that didn't take up much space, plus several heavy chests of copper coins. When I checked again, the space was packed solid. The only room left was barely enough for me to stand in. I wanted more, but I knew I had to stop. Except for those 2 luminous pearls. Those I absolutely was not leaving behind. The second I pulled them into my space, the treasury went pitch black. I knocked on the trapdoor. I'm done. Let's go. Emoji opened it from below, and I climbed down. I looked back up at the treasury. It was a mess, with bolts of silk and fabric still scattered everywhere. Things I couldn't fit. There's too much left. Silk and fabrics mostly, I said. What are you thinking? He'd already guessed. Under the cover of darkness, I pulled a bottle of rubbing alcohol from my space and splashed it across the treasury floor. Joy didn't miss a beat. He pulled out a fire starter from his coat, lit it, and tossed it in. The alcohol caught instantly. The whole treasury erupted in flames. Joy grabbed me, and we ran. Neither of us said anything, but we both felt the same rush of satisfaction. Especially Joy. There was something in his expression that said this felt like payback. I think he would have loved to see the Emperor's face when he found out his treasury was ash. We made it back to the estate safely and changed out of our black clothes. Joy got back in bed, and that's when I noticed blood on the floor. You're bleeding. I have to treat your wounds, I said. I'd seen plenty of people die from infected surface wounds in my past life. I wasn't going to let Joy get taken down by something so preventable.
No, it's not serious, he said.
But I knew why he was refusing. His injuries were on his backside. The 50 strikes had landed there. He was too embarrassed to let me look. I'm a woman and I'm not bothered, I told him. You're a grown man. Are you worried about losing something here? His face turned red. He kept squirming away from me. I tried another angle. We're husband and wife. Husband and wife, you understand? We're supposed to see each other without barriers. I was just trying to get him to cooperate, but I'd completely forgotten I was talking to an ancient man with deeply traditional values. My words were basically pouring oil on a fire of embarrassment. He stared at me, speechless. He couldn't argue. Technically, we were married. But what kind of woman just says things like that out loud? While he was still processing his shock, I'd already lifted his outer robe. Even though everything he wore was wedding red, the sight underneath was alarming. His red undergarments were soaked through with blood. The bright red fabric had turned a dark, ugly shade. And this was the man who just carried me across rooftops to rob the imperial treasury. How tough did a person have to be to push through that kind of pain? My respect for him grew even deeper. He finally gave in, turned his face to the wall, closed his eyes, and surrendered to the situation. With him looking away, I freely pulled supplies from my space. Alcohol, tweezers, cotton swabs. Then I noticed something strange. I was sure I'd had 3 bottles of alcohol in my space. I used one to burn the treasury, so there should have been 2 left. But when I looked, there were still 3. I wasn't ready to say for certain, but it seemed like my space might have a regeneration ability. Items that got used up might replenish themselves. I decided to test it. I noted there were 2 bottles now, and after I finished treating Joy, I'd check again. If there were 3, I'd know for sure. I set the thought aside and carefully pulled down Joy's pants. The wounds were brutal. Even for someone like me, who had seen every kind of injury in my past life, the sight was hard to look at. The man's toughness was beyond anything I'd ever seen. His skin was covered in dark purple bruises from his backside all the way down his thighs. There was barely a patch of undamaged skin. Several wounds had split open and were still bleeding. The people who carried out the beating hadn't held back at all. And yet this was the same man who'd just carried me across rooftops to rob the imperial treasury. Anyone else would have been too afraid to even move. When he felt the cool air on his skin, he instinctively reached for his pants to pull them back up. My training kicked in. I was a doctor now, nothing else. Don't move, I said firmly. His hand froze. I pulled it away and told him straight. You didn't break any bones, but these wounds are serious. Don't underestimate surface injuries. People die from infections all the time if they're not treated properly. He grumbled something but finally gave in, closed his eyes, and let me work. I soaked a cotton ball in alcohol, gripped it with tweezers, and carefully cleaned each wound. This will sting. Bear with it. He barely flinched. For him, this was nothing. After disinfecting everything, I pulled out a packet of Yunnan Baiyao from my space, the best thing for this kind of wound. I sprinkled the powder evenly across the injured areas. My fingers accidentally brushed his skin, and I felt his whole body tense up. I didn't think much of it. I was focused on the job. I bandaged him up, then gave him a tetanus shot in the arm. He flinched at the needle and tried to pull away. Hold still, I said. He froze again until it was over. When I finished, I looked at his blood-soaked underwear. Where do you keep your clothes? I'll get you a clean pair. He wouldn't even turn his head. Left wardrobe. All my clothes are there. I grabbed a pair of white undergarments and set them on the bed. Then I started pulling off the ruined pair that was bunched at his knees. He stopped me immediately. I can do it myself. Your wounds just got treated. If you move wrong and start bleeding again, all my work was for nothing. Men and women should keep proper distance. I can't let you change my pants. I burst out laughing before I could stop myself. I've already seen your entire backside. And you're worried about me pulling up a pair of pants. He had nothing to say to that. I could practically see steam coming off his face. After a long, painful silence, he cleared his throat. If I survive all this, I will take responsibility for you. In his mind, me seeing him like this was the same as physical intimacy. As a man of honor, he couldn't let a woman be wronged without making it right. I laughed so hard I had to muffle myself so the servants outside wouldn't hear. Please don't be so serious. I treated your wounds because that's what a doctor does. There's nothing to take responsibility for. Don't overthink it. Honestly, I hadn't thought about any kind of future with Mo Jury. I admired him as a hero, but we'd just met. There were no feelings between us. I just wanted to keep him alive through the exile. Everything else could happen naturally or not at all. I wasn't going to throw myself into a marriage just because the man happened to be my idol. But if feelings developed over time and we both wanted it, I'd be open to that.
Just not now.
Now I had 100 things to worry about. I carefully helped him get the pants on. Once both legs were through, he absolutely refused any more help. I'll handle the rest myself. Fair enough. The man could fly across rooftops. He could manage pulling up his own pants if he was careful. Before he turned over, I quickly stashed my medical supplies back in my space and checked the alcohol count. 3 bottles.
My heart jumped.
It really was 3. The bottle I'd used to burn the treasury had regenerated. And not just the alcohol, the Yunnan Baiyao, the bandages, the tetanus vaccine, the syringe. Everything was back to its original count. Even the tweezers had an extra one now. My space had a regeneration function. Anything that was originally in there from my past life would replenish itself after being used. The things I'd collected here in ancient times didn't regenerate. The stuff I'd dumped in the side room was still gone. But everything from my old world came back. This changed everything. My space wasn't just a medical office with some basic supplies. It was a self-replenishing resource. I felt my spine straighten with a new kind of confidence. But there was no time to celebrate. I grabbed the 2 servant contracts and headed outside. Xiaoyu was still at her post by the door. Xiaoyu, come to your room. I need to talk to you and Xiaoxin. She'd been serving the original Hejuran for years, but she'd never seen me look this serious. She followed without a word, though I could tell she was nervous about what was coming. My 2 dowry maids shared a room. Xiaoyu was on duty, and Xiaoxin had already gone to sleep. When I opened the door, Xiaoxin sat up in a hurry, thinking it was Xiaoyu coming back.
I didn't waste time.
I put both servant contracts on the table. Take these and leave the estate tonight. You're free now. They didn't understand. Xiaoxin thought I was punishing her and begged me to just scold her instead. Xiaoyu said she wanted to serve me for the rest of her life. I told them the truth. Mo Joy had angered the emperor, and punishment was coming for the entire household. When that happened, I couldn't protect them. If they stayed, they'd be seized by the government and sold off to who knows where. Better to leave now while they still could. I slipped 40 taels of silver from my space and gave them 20 each. They were devastated. Serving me was all they'd ever known. They couldn't accept it. Both refused to leave. But I didn't have the time or energy to argue. This isn't up for discussion.
Pack your things.
You have 15 minutes. I'll have someone escort you out. They tried to protest again. I raised my hand and cut them off.
Enough.
No more talking. While I was freeing my maids, Mo Joy was doing the same thing, calling in his most trusted servants and returning their contracts. As for the rest of the household staff, that would be up to old Madame Mo and the sisters-in-law. By the time we'd sent everyone off, the sky was getting light. I checked the clock in my space, just past 5 in the morning. The main kitchen was empty because I'd cleaned it out and then dumped the bulky kitchen equipment in the side room to make space for treasury loot. Luckily, old Madame Mo had a small kitchen in her own courtyard, and she'd ordered someone to cook porridge there. Even if we were about to be exiled, we needed to eat first. An older servant woman came to our room to call us for breakfast. As for the traditional tea ceremony where a new bride serves her mother-in-law, that was skipped entirely. Nobody cared about formalities right now. I asked Mo Joy if he was coming. He shook his head. I'll keep pretending to be unconscious. That was smart. The emperor had beaten him last night, hoping he'd be too injured to survive the exile road. If Mo Joy showed up walking around looking fine, the emperor might come up with something worse. Better to play dead as long as possible. I'll go check on things and bring you some food, I said. At old Madame Mo's courtyard, the sisters-in-law and little sister Mo Hanyue were already seated properly around the dining table, waiting. Nobody touched their chopsticks until the old matriarch gave the word. Mo Hanyue clearly didn't know what was happening with the family. She bounced over to me with a bright smile and asked where her 9th brother was. I kept it simple, told her he'd come back late from the palace and was still sleeping. She bought it completely and pulled me toward the table. Old Madame Mo and the others all knew the real situation. Their faces were grim, but nobody said a word in front of Mo Hanyue. The old matriarch welcomed me warmly and apologized for the plain meal on my first morning as a new bride. I told her it was perfectly fine and sat down next to Mo Hanyue. Then I looked at the bowl of porridge in front of me, and my expression changed. Mother, sisters-in-law, who prepared this porridge? Old Madame Mo had just lifted her bowl and was about to take a sip. She set it back down. One of my servant women made it. Why, Mother, this porridge is poisoned. Every bowl hit the table at once. All eyes locked on me. Poisoned. Old Madame Mo could barely believe it. If I'm not mistaken, it's a lethal poison called Ascension. Once you swallow it, there's no surviving. The words had barely left my mouth when a servant burst in, panicking. Old Madam. Something terrible. Old Chin and little Chui drank some water and collapsed. There on the ground, foaming at the mouth, old Madame Mo rushed to the side room with all of us following. Sure enough, 2 women were lying on the floor, convulsing, foaming, eyes rolling back. They looked like they were seconds from death. Old Madame Mo stepped back out and looked directly at me. Someone has indeed poisoned us. When I heard the servants report about the 2 women collapsing after drinking water, I put it together fast. They were poisoned by the water, and our porridge was made with the same water. Someone had poisoned the well. Mother, where does the kitchen get its water? I asked. From the well behind my courtyard. I went straight to the well, drew up a bucket, dipped my finger in, rubbed the water between my fingertips and sniffed it. Everyone around me held their breath watching. I set the bucket down. The poison is in this well. Old Madame Mo's face turned to ice. Even with disaster closing in on the family, she still had the authority of the household matriarch. Find out who did this. Now, the servants scattered. It didn't take long before someone came running back. Old Madam, Servant Lou has hanged herself in her room. We all went to look. Her body was dangling from the ceiling beam, already dead. My first thought was that she'd killed herself out of guilt. Whoever was behind this had used her as a pawn. According to the history I knew, the MO family's only real enemy was the Emperor. But poisoning the household when he was already planning to exile them didn't make sense. Why bother? So, who else hated the MO family this much? Old Madame MO ordered her people to search the dead woman's body and room. They found nothing on her except a few copper coins, but in the corner of her bed, they discovered a small paper packet. It was empty, but traces of white powder still clung to the paper, clearly where the poison had been stored. Normally, the old matriarch would have called for an imperial physician to examine it. But after last night, when every doctor in the city refused to come treat MO Jury, there was no point even trying. I stepped forward. Mother, I know some medicine. Let me take a look. She hesitated for just a moment, then handed me the packet. Be careful. It's likely poison. I smelled it first, then rubbed a tiny bit between my fingers. I looked up. This is the same substance that was put in the well. Old Madame MO clenched her fists. That woman served me since she was young. I treated her well. Why would she do this? Mother, someone was pulling her strings. She didn't act alone. But none of us could figure out who was behind it. And with everything falling apart around us, there was no time to investigate. Old Madame MO sighed. We'll set this aside for now. I'll discuss it with Joy later. Then the sisters-in-law all turned to me with grateful looks. First sister-in-law spoke up. If you hadn't caught the poison in time, every one of us would be dead right now. The others echoed her, thanking me, praising me. I just smiled and told them we were family, no need for formalities. Old Madame MO told them that if they wanted to show gratitude, they should prove it through actions, not words. That shut everyone up quick. She sent people to deal with the body, then ordered them to fetch water from a different well and make breakfast again. Her thinking was simple. If today really was our last day before exile, we needed to eat well while we still could. While they prepared the new meal, Old Madame MO checked in with the sisters-in-law about last night's preparations. One by one, they confirmed they'd all sewn hidden pouches into their underclothes and tucked their silver notes inside with cotton padding, just like I'd suggested. Little sister MO Hanue had no idea what anyone was talking about. Mother, what are you all preparing for? Old Madame MO glanced at her innocent daughter and couldn't bring herself to tell the truth. Hanue, you're a young lady. You don't need to know everything. MO Hanue pouted but could tell her mother's mood was dark, so she kept quiet. The new breakfast arrived soon. I checked everything carefully. It was clean. Only then did everyone start eating. The mood at the table was heavy. Nobody spoke. It felt like we were eating our last meal. I finished a bowl of porridge quickly and stood up. Mother, I'll bring some food back for my husband. What I really needed was to talk to Mo Joy. Someone had sent that woman to poison the whole household, and I had no idea who. Maybe he would. Back in our room, Mo Joy was still lying face down on the bed exactly as I'd left him. When he heard me come in, he asked if anything had happened outside. I set the food on the table near the bed. Nothing from outside. But someone poisoned the well in your mother's courtyard. I caught it just in time. If I hadn't, everyone in this household would be dead. When Mo Joy heard about the poisoning, he sat up so fast he forgot about his injuries. What happened? I told him everything, what I found, what happened to the two servants, and my guesses about who might be behind it. I asked if he had any idea who could have ordered Servant Lou to poison the well. His brow furrowed, and I caught flashes of something cold and dangerous in his eyes. He clearly had someone in mind, but he didn't say who. I wasn't the nosy type, and I knew he still didn't fully trust me, so I didn't push. As long as he was on guard, that was enough. After a long silence, I pointed at the table. Your food is getting cold. Eat before the Emperor's men get here. Mo Joy glanced outside. It's almost the hour of the dragon. They should have been here by now. He was right. According to history, the soldiers were supposed to arrive at dawn. We were running late. Maybe the treasury fire delayed things, I said. He didn't disagree. The treasury being robbed and burned is no small matter. The emperor's probably too overwhelmed to deal with us right now. Just then, a servant came to say someone was asking to see the duke's wife, me. Mo Joy and I exchanged confused looks. Who would come visiting on a bride's second day? He didn't tell me what to do. He just went back to eating, leaving the decision to me. I went to the back gate. The visitor was dressed as a household servant, and he looked familiar. After digging through the original girl's memories, I recognized him. He was my father's personal attendant. He bowed and said my father had sent him with an urgent message. The emperor was about to send troops to raid the Duke Protector's estate. I should prepare myself. Did my father say when they'll arrive? I asked. I don't know, Mississippi. But the master also wanted me to tell you. As a daughter of the He family, you must not betray your vows. No matter what happens to the Duke's household, you are not to leave. I didn't need that lecture. I had no intention of leaving. Since he had nothing more useful to tell me, I sent him away and ran back to our room. I told Mo Joy everything without waiting for him to ask. His face showed nothing. After a long pause, he said coldly, "What's coming will come eventually." His voice was calm, but I could hear the despair underneath. I tried to encourage him. Look at it this way. As long as we survive, there will be a chance to clear your name someday. He let out a bitter laugh. I'm a grown man, and I'm dragging an entire household of women into ruin with me. What kind of future is there to talk about? I knew he was at his lowest point. No amount of reasoning would help right now. I'd have to work on lifting his spirits over time. Then a shriek came from outside. 8th sister-in-law. The kitchen pots and water jars and the storeroom things. They're all piled up in 9th brother's side room. My stomach dropped.
I'd forgotten about that.
When I cleared out my space to make room for the treasury loot, I dumped everything in the side room. Kitchen equipment, storeroom vases, decorations, all of it. Now someone had found the mess. There was no way to explain this. Mo Joy barely raised an eyebrow at my brief flash of panic. If they ask, tell them I did it, he said quietly. That steadied me instantly. With Mo Joy covering for me, I had nothing to worry about. I went to the side room. The sisters-in-law and old Madame Mo were all standing at the doorway, jaws hanging open at the mountain of random household items crammed inside. 3rd sister-in-law grabbed my arm. How did everything from the storeroom and kitchen end up here? I copied their shocked expressions, wide eyes, head shaking. It wasn't like this when I came to check my dowry last night. How did all this get here? 6th sister-in-law was furious at the mystery thief. What kind of thief steals a giant iron cooking pot? They probably took everything, realized most of it was worthless, and dumped it here. Are we dealing with some kind of ghost? How do you move all this without anyone noticing? Listening to them curse the thief was both funny and painful. I had to keep my face completely straight. Then Mo Joy came limping over. Stop guessing. It was me. I didn't want to hand our things over to the enemy, but then I realized we couldn't take it all. So I just left it in the side room. His explanation was a stretch, but nobody questioned it. He was a legendary warrior. Moving some pots and shelves in the night wasn't hard to believe. Old Madame Mo cut in before the sisters-in-law could say more.
Enough.
Your 9th sister-in-law didn't forget her dowry, and you can all stop worrying about things that don't matter. That shut everyone up. Mo Joy invited them all inside and told them about the message from my father's servant. The emperor's men were on their way. Every trace of a smile vanished from the room. We all knew what was coming. All we could do now was wait. Meanwhile, in the imperial court, the emperor was losing his mind. The treasury had been robbed clean and burned to ashes overnight. He screamed at his officials, calling them useless. Nobody dared say a word. They all knew that whoever spoke up first would become his punching bag. Finally, the eldest prince carefully reminded him that there was still important business to handle today. That snapped the emperor back to his plan. He ordered the decree read out loud. Mo Joy was charged with treason and conspiring with the enemy. Most of the senior officials already knew this was coming. When the emperor wanted someone destroyed, you just stood there and watched. My father, Minister He, had only found out by accident. He overheard some officials whispering about it and secretly sent his servant to warn us. The emperor was thorough. To make his case look more convincing, he dragged a few minor officials into the charges too, linking their supposed crimes to Mo Joy. That served three purposes. It made the Mo family look even more guilty, it silenced anyone who might speak up for Mo Joy, and it would make the exile road more miserable by adding extra people to manage. When the decree was read, the entire court went silent. Some officials looked angry on Mo Joy's behalf, but nobody dared open their mouth. The emperor didn't care about their feelings. He just wanted Mo Joy gone. To twist the knife further, he sent General Chowren to carry out the raid, a man Mo Joy had once scolded publicly. The emperor picked him on purpose, knowing he'd make things as humiliating as possible for the family. Back at the estate, old Madame Mo and all the women waited with me in the bridal chamber. The morning hours dragged on with no sign of soldiers. Old Madame Mo looked uneasily at Mo Joy. Could the information be wrong? Before he could answer, a servant burst in. My lord, the estate is surrounded. General Chow has forced his way in with soldiers. Old Madame Mo closed her eyes and sighed. I shouldn't have let myself hope. Mo Hanue grabbed her mother's arm in terror. Mother, what's happening? The sisters-in-law were shaking despite their brave words from last night. Old Madame Mo straightened herself. Since they're here, we face them with dignity. Everyone follow me. I watched them file out, then turned to Mo Joy, who hadn't moved from the bed. Don't worry. I'll help your mother handle this. He had to keep playing unconscious. He couldn't go out there. His dark eyes were full of bitterness and self-blame. But he spoke calmly. Tell them not to resist. Just protect themselves. I promise you, I said. As long as I'm here, not a single member of the Mo family will be lost. I ran to catch up with old Madame Mo's group. We didn't get far before we heard heavy footsteps and the cries of servants being shoved around. About 50 uniformed soldiers marched toward us, surrounding General Chowren, who wore a smug grin on his face. Before they even reached us, someone shouted, Nobody move. Imperial order. This household is to be raided. Old Madame Mo stopped and faced them with forced composure. Mo Hanue clung to her mother's hand, too terrified to breathe. The sisters-in-law were trembling despite everything they'd sworn the night before. I stood at the back of the group, watching the soldiers closely. Without anyone noticing, I pulled a sharp dagger from my space and gripped it tightly under my sleeve. If anyone tried to hurt the Mo family, I was ready. Chowren strutted forward with the imperial decree, sneering. The Mo family will receive the decree. And where is the Duke himself? Too important to come greet the Emperor's order? That's a serious offense. He sent a soldier toward the back of the estate to drag Mo Joy out. Old Madame Mo stepped in quickly. The Duke was summoned to the palace last night and beaten 50 times on the Emperor's orders. He's still unconscious. Chowren put on an exaggerated look of fake surprise.
What?
The Emperor beat him? I had no idea. He was clearly enjoying every second. Old Madame Mo's voice turned cold. General Chow, you're a court official. Deliver the decree if that's your job. There's no need to kick people when they're down. First sister-in-law spoke up too. Everyone in the capital knows the Mo family has only women left besides ninth brother. Bullying a group of women isn't exactly something you'd want people talking about. Third sister-in-law added, and our birth families all have men serving in court. Word gets around. That gave Chowren pause. Making enemies out of multiple official families over some petty power trip wasn't worth the trouble. Fine, he said, dropping the act. I won't make things difficult. The Mo household will now receive the imperial decree. Even though we all hated the emperor, the rules still had to be followed. Old Madame Mo knelt first, and the sisters-in-law and Mo Hanue followed. I didn't want to kneel, but I couldn't stand out. Luckily, my wide skirt gave me cover. I just squatted behind everyone and let the fabric hide my legs. Chowren read the decree. Mo Joy was charged with conspiring with enemies, stealing military supplies, and plotting rebellion with other court officials. The emperor, in his so-called mercy, spared the family from execution on account of the Mo ancestors' loyalty. Instead, all property would be seized, all servants sold, and the entire Mo family exiled to the northwest. Nobody broke down. Nobody screamed for justice. We'd all prepared for this. We knew begging would be pointless. The emperor had made up his mind. The fact that he'd sent Chaoren of all people told us everything about his intentions. Old Madame Mo accepted the decree and stood up. Chaoren immediately ordered his men to tear the estate apart. He said not to leave a single mouse hole unchecked. Then, he turned his attention to us. The women needed to be searched, he said. And as his eyes swept over the sisters-in-law, I saw something disgusting flash across his face. Out of respect for my time serving alongside Mo Jury, he said with a sleazy grin, I'll personally handle searching the ladies. Every woman stepped back. These were decent, honorable women, widows who had kept their virtue. They would never let a man put his hands on them. Old Madame Mo spoke through clenched teeth. General Chao, this is against proper conduct. We may be criminals now, but these women are not to be humiliated. She was ready to die over this. A woman's honor meant more than life itself to her. Chaoren didn't care. Old lady, don't refuse a toast only to drink a penalty. I'm doing you a favor by searching you myself. If you'd rather, I can have all my soldiers do it together. That was the last straw. Old Madame Mo pulled the hairpin from her head and lunged at him. I'll fight you right here. Chaoren was a trained warrior. He wasn't afraid of an old woman. In fact, I could see him calculating that killing her might even earn him a reward from the emperor. He pulled back his leg to kick her. I was faster. I shot forward, grabbed old Madame Mo, and yanked her to safety. His kick hit nothing but air. He glared at me. His eyes moved over my face, my figure, my clothes. Then his expression shifted to something that made my stomach turn. Well, which brother's widow might you be? I didn't know the Mo family was hiding such a beauty. I kept my face like stone. How dare you, Chaoren? Court law forbids officials from harassing the families of convicted criminals during the execution of duties, he laughed. Feisty little thing. So, what if I'm harassing you? What are you going to do about it? Court regulations state that officials carrying out orders may not harm family members who haven't been sentenced to death and may not assault or harass them. You're doing both in broad daylight with witnesses. Are you not afraid the emperor will punish you for breaking his own laws? That landed. He knew the law. He just assumed a household full of women wouldn't. Having a young woman throw the legal code in his face in front of his own soldiers rattled him. But he wasn't done. He tried intimidation. Pretty words won't save you. Submit to me, and we can negotiate the search. Refuse, and don't blame me for what happens next. I'd already switched the dagger in my sleeve for a mini handgun for my space. If he made a move, I wouldn't hesitate. But I wanted to handle this with my head first. If I shot him here, the Mo women would pay the price. Let me explain something to you, Chaoren, I said, my voice calm and clear. When we're exiled, our birth families will come to see us off. Every one of my sisters-in-law will see their relatives. If any of them tells their family what you did here today, what do you think happens to you? And our mother's families haven't been charged with any crime. My father is a minister of the court. If he comes to send me off and I'm not there, if he hears I died at your hands, what do you think a second-rank official will do to a fourth-rank officer like you? The sisters-in-law found their courage. My brother will avenge me if I'm not there when he comes. My father, too. Keep this up and I'll smash my head against this wall right now. Chaoren looked at the wall of furious women staring him down and froze. He hadn't expected any of this. The pretty one's father was Minister He Yuanming, a second-rank official. He was just a fourth-rank military officer. He couldn't afford that fight. And the other widows all had families in government too, some outranking him. He swallowed his pride and tried to save face. Humph. I'm only letting you off because I pity you for being widows all these years. Chaoren whispered something to one of his soldiers, who ran off and came back with several tough-looking old women, each carrying a big bundle. Chaoren ordered them to search us thoroughly. If anyone went easy on us, they'd lose their head. Mo Hanua hid behind her mother, whimpering that she was scared. Old Madame Mo snapped at her to stand straight and not shame the Mo ancestors. The poor girl forced herself upright, tears streaming down her face. The women dragged us into a nearby room and made us strip. They checked everything. The hidden pouches we'd sewn into our underclothes found. Every last silver note was pulled out, along with all our hairpins and jewelry. Nothing survived. I was so grateful for my space. Without it, we'd have lost everything. Then they took our silk clothes too. They made us change into the rough, patched-up gray outfits they'd brought. Eighth sister-in-law protested. Our clothes weren't even worth much. Why take them? One of the old women flashed her yellow teeth and sneered. Be grateful you have anything to cover yourselves with. Old Madame Emo shut down any further complaints. She grabbed one of the ragged outfits and put it on without a word. I followed her lead. The others swallowed their anger and did the same. At least they let us keep our shoes. The women handed everything they'd taken to Chow Ren. He looked at the silver notes, barely over 1,000 taels, and stuffed them into his coat with a look of disgust. The jewelry went into a wooden box. The sisters-in-law were devastated. Without money, surviving the long road to the northwest would be nearly impossible. Even old Madame Emo lost her composure. With no silver, how would we bribe the escort soldiers to treat us decently? Then the search teams came back from the rest of the estate, and their reports almost made Chow Ren explode. General, the storeroom is completely empty. What? There's nothing in it, sir. The kitchen is empty too. Chow Ren turned on us. You moved everything out beforehand, didn't you? Old Madame Emo answered calmly. The Emperor's decree came today. Does the Emo family have the ability to predict the future? He couldn't argue with that. But he refused to believe a duke's household could be this poor. More soldiers reported in. They'd found some large water jars and worthless items in Emo Jui's courtyard, a few pieces of women's jewelry scattered in other rooms, and a few dozen taels of silver. That was it. Chow Ren finally accepted the truth. The Emo family hadn't hidden anything. They were genuinely poor. If they'd moved valuables in advance, they wouldn't have left behind those small bits of jewelry and silver. The Great Duke Protector's household was poorer than his own fourth-rank officer's home. He looked at us with a smug sense of superiority. Who would have guessed the mighty Duke's estate was just an empty shell? Then again, what can a house full of women earn? One of his soldiers eagerly agreed. Chow Ren loved being flattered. He left some men to guard the seized goods and the remaining servants, then ordered the rest to escort us prisoners to the city outskirts. Before leaving, he cast one more lingering look at me. It made my skin crawl. As the soldiers watched Chow Ren walk away, I slipped out of the group unnoticed. Once I was out of sight, I hiked up my skirt, climbed a thick tree, and pulled my sniper rifle from my space. I loaded the round. I aimed. The crosshairs settled on the back of Chow Ren's skull. He mounted his horse outside the estate gates. The moment he sat up tall in the saddle, I squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the air like thunder. Chow Ren's body jerked sideways, and he tumbled off his horse. I immediately entered my space. That gunshot was loud enough for everyone to hear, and they'd search for the source. I'd hide inside until attention shifted away from the spot, then slip back out. I hadn't wanted to cause trouble at a time like this. But that man had crossed my line over and over again. Someone like him didn't deserve another minute of breathing. What I didn't know was that Emo Joy had been hiding nearby the whole time, watching everything. He saw my shot. He saw my weapon. And he saw me vanish into thin air. He was shaking his head, trying to make sense of it. Who was this woman? Where did that weapon come from? How did she disappear? Was she some kind of immortal? Everything I'd done in the past 2 days had completely shattered his understanding of the world. Whatever Emo Joy thought of what he'd just seen, at least he could tell one thing for sure. I wasn't a threat to his family. After my shot, the soldiers all ran toward the tree to investigate. Emo Joy, who'd been hiding nearby watching everything, used the chaos to slip away unnoticed. Inside my space, I got another pleasant surprise. The dagger, the mini handgun, and the sniper rifle I'd taken out. Each one had regenerated an extra copy. More weapons meant more protection on the road ahead. I'd take as many as I could get. I waited about 10 minutes in my space, then came out. The soldiers were gone, and so were the Emo family women. I jumped down from the tree and ran back to the bridal chamber. The sisters-in-law had already placed Emo Joy on a door plank under the soldiers' watch. 4 of them were struggling to carry him, while the soldiers barked at them to move faster. Seeing them struggle, I remembered the soldiers had found a wooden pushcart during their search. I called out for them to stop. The lead soldier turned around, annoyed. What now? I kept my voice calm. You want us at the city outskirts quickly, right? Look at us, all women, carrying a grown man on a plank. We'll never make it at this pace. That wooden cart you found isn't worth anything. Let us use it to push him, and we'll move much faster. He thought it over and agreed. We loaded Mo Joy onto the cart, and I pushed him myself. The sisters-in-law looked at me with admiration. It was a small thing, but it made a real difference. We reached the front gate of the estate. A crowd had gathered. Some were curious onlookers, and a few were relatives of the sisters-in-law who'd rushed over after hearing the news. The scene with Chowren had already caused a stir. People had seen him fall off his horse with a hole in the back of his skull. The city magistrate had been called and ordered an examination, but the coroner couldn't identify what weapon had caused the wound. Since Chowren was an official who died on duty, it was a serious matter. But Mo Joy had been beaten half to death and couldn't move, and the rest of the household was just women. Nobody could be suspected. The magistrate gave up and had the body sent to the court of justice. By the time we came out, Chowren's corpse was already gone, and most of the crowd had followed it for more excitement. The few people left were family members of the sisters-in-law. Third sister-in-law's mother came running first, crying and grabbing her daughter's hands. She secretly pressed a small purse of silver into her palm, her own personal savings, hastily gathered. Third sister-in-law didn't want to take her mother's money, but after the search had stripped us of everything, she knew the family needed it to survive the road. She clutched the purse and promised her mother they'd make it to the northwest safely. Fourth sister-in-law's family came too, also slipping her some money. They tried to hand over supplies and luggage, but the soldiers refused. Prisoners weren't allowed such things. The other sisters-in-law watched with envy.
No one had come for them.
I wondered if anyone from the He family would show up for me. They didn't. The soldiers ordered everyone to move. They shoved the Feng and Shao families away. Old Madame Mo took one last look at the grand gates of the Duke Protector's estate, then turned and took her first step forward. Mo Hanyue, still shaking from everything she'd witnessed, stuck close to her mother's back. I pushed the cart with Mo Joy behind them. The 8 sisters-in-law followed behind me. We walked through the bustling streets of the capital. Vendors called out from their stalls. The city was alive and vibrant, completely indifferent to our tragedy. Every one of us understood the same thing. This city's prosperity had nothing to do with us anymore. Under the stares of the common people, the soldiers marched us through the city gates. Besides third and fourth sister-in-law, none of us, including me, had seen a single family member come to say goodbye. The sisters-in-law, who'd been holding out hope, lost at the moment we passed through those gates. They couldn't help but feel bitter about how quickly people turned their backs when trouble came. I didn't feel much about it. I still saw myself as an outsider here. I hadn't expected anything from the original girl's parents. We all walked in silence, lost in our own thoughts, until we reached the outskirts. What surprised me was that more people were already waiting there, not just the soldiers assigned to escort us, but other convicted families, also sentenced to exile. From the way they were grouped, it was clear they'd been condemned the same way we had. Entire clans punished together. Old habits die hard. No matter where I ended up, I always scoped out my surroundings first. What I noticed made my stomach tighten. Most of the other convicted families were glaring at us with open hostility. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, thinking I was imagining it. I wasn't. Some of them couldn't hold back. They started shouting insults at us from across the clearing. Mo Joy, you curse jinx. You got all your own brothers killed, and now you've dragged us down with you. I curse the entire Mo family to die miserably. If it weren't for you, my family would never be suffering. Like this, the soldiers didn't lift a finger to stop them. That confirmed my suspicion. The Emperor had deliberately tied these families to Mo Joy's charges, so they'd make our exile even more miserable. A built-in source of hatred for the entire journey. What confused me was why they were calling Mo Joy a jinx. I'd have to figure that out later. Mo Joy was lying on the cart, fighting to keep his composure. He cracked his eyes open just enough to peek through his hair at who was yelling. He recognized some of them, court officials and their families. One was a man named He Ziyuan, a former vice minister who'd been responsible for military grain supply. Mo Joy had once reported him to the emperor for skimming supplies meant for the troops. Another was Li Liang from the Hanlin Academy, who tried to marry his daughter to Mo Joy as a concubine and been flatly rejected. The loudest family belonged to Fang Chuanzhou, a vice minister of war. Mo Joy couldn't figure out what grudge that man had against him. They'd never had any conflict. Then second sister-in-law suddenly broke away from our group, running toward the other prisoners with tears streaming down her face. Father, mother, brother, how are you here too? So that's why her family hadn't come to see her off. They'd been convicted as well. Her father forced a painful smile and said he'd done something wrong and been punished by the emperor. But her younger brother Xie Ming blurted out the truth. The Xie family had been dragged down because of the duke's household. He glared at Mo Joy while saying it. Their father shut him up fast. This wasn't the place for that conversation. Second sister-in-law understood too. With everyone watching, the details would have to wait. Mo Joy and I had both been straining to listen, hoping to understand what was going on, but her father was too careful. We got nothing. Old Madame Mo, steady as always, gave a polite nod to the Xie family without saying a word. Whether they resented us or not, she kept her dignity. After the soldiers finished their handover procedures, they half-heartedly told the other families to stop cursing at us. Those people hadn't accepted their new reality yet. They talked back and argued with the soldiers like they were still important officials. The soldiers weren't having it. One of them unhooked his whip and cracked it across the loudest ones. You want to die before you even reach the northwest? Just say so. The sting of the whip brought them back to reality. They looked down at the rough, patched clothes they were wearing, worse than common peasants, and finally understood their situation. They shut their mouths, though they kept shooting hateful looks our way. Old Madame Mo and the rest of us didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. The lead soldier called out that we were moving immediately. But just then, a horse-drawn carriage came racing from the direction of the city.
Wait.
Please wait, the driver shouted. Everyone turned to look. The carriage stopped in front of the group, and two people climbed out, a man and a woman, both older, with their faces wrapped in cloth to hide their identities. Their eyes searched the crowd and landed on me. The man walked quickly to the lead soldier and pressed a large silver ingot into his hand. His tone was humble and polite. He clearly didn't want to reveal who he was. Could we have a moment, please? The soldier weighed the silver in his palm. You've got the time it takes to burn one stick of incense. Make it quick. The man pulled the woman along toward me. As he passed old Madame Mo, he briefly tugged down his face, covering just enough for her to recognize him. She got the message and led everyone else away, leaving me alone. It was the original He Zhiran's parents, Minister He Yuanming and his wife Ling Xuyan. The moment her mother saw me in those rough, patched prisoner's clothes, her tears came pouring out. She grabbed me and held me tight, sobbing into my shoulder. Ran, I'm so sorry. I should never have forced you to marry into the Mo family. It's all my fault. In my past life, my parents had divorced when I was small. Neither of them ever made me feel wanted. I was just a burden they passed back and forth. I never once felt real parental warmth. Now, being held tight by this woman who loved her daughter with everything she had, it was strange and unfamiliar. But I didn't pull away. After a few awkward tries of raising my hand and putting it back down, I finally rested it on her back and gently patted her. I copied what I'd seen in TV dramas from my past life and gently comforted her. Mother, I'm only being exiled, not going to my death. Please don't be sad. That actually made her cry harder. Seeing her daughter suddenly so mature and sensible only deepened her pain. Minister He, my father in this life, was holding back his own tears. He knew time was short. He pulled his wife aside and spoke to me seriously. Your mother and I truly wronged you. Married just one day, and now this. He slipped a heavy purse into my hand, then pressed a small bundle into my arms. The soldiers didn't interfere. They'd already been paid off. Besides, in their minds, any money prisoners had would end up in their pockets sooner or later. This is travel money from your mother and me. Don't be stingy with it. Use it to bribe the escorts and buy better food on the road. Your mother also packed some clean underclothes for you. His voice cracked. He turned away, unable to look at me. It was my fault. I should never have forced you to marry into the MO family. Father, the word came out easily. Whether from the original girl's memories or what I was seeing right now, this man loved his daughter deeply. He was a good father. I was happy to call him that. I was the one who was difficult before, always making you and mother angry. Now I'm a MO family woman. Please don't worry. I'll survive this, and when the day comes that we're cleared, I'll come back and take care of you both. That set mother off again. She threw her arms around me and sobbed. Father wiped his eyes beside us. Maybe it was the original girl's emotions bleeding through, or maybe it was me cherishing the parental love I'd never had in my past life. Either way, my own tears started falling too. Father was the practical one. He reminded us time was almost up and said he wanted to see MO Joy. I told him MO Joy was still unconscious. I couldn't reveal the truth with so many eyes around us. Father nodded heavily and walked over to the cart. Seeing MO Joy lying there, battered and unresponsive, made his guilt even worse. His daughter had begged not to marry into a family where every man died young, and he'd forced her anyway. Now, one day later, exile. He was already mentally planning to bring me back from the Northwest once the Emperor's anger toward the MO family cooled down. He found an angle where the soldiers couldn't see and slipped a letter into MO Joy's clothes. Then he stood and addressed old Madame MO politely, asking her to be patient with his spoiled daughter. Old Madame MO smiled warmly. That child is clever and kind. I'm very fond of her. Father said his goodbye and pulled mother away. She kept looking back at me, step after step, until we disappeared from each other's sight. This unexpected wave of parental love left me feeling things I couldn't quite sort out. I envied the original Hee-jeon. She'd had parents who truly loved her, even if her time with them was only 17 short years. I made a quiet promise. From now on, I'd honor her parents as my own. The sisters-in-law came over to comfort me. One said my father was an upright official and would be fine. Another said at least my parents had chased us all the way out here to say goodbye. Some of them hadn't seen a single family member. I smiled and told them I believed we'd all make it back someday. The soldiers cut the moment short. Enough standing around. Move it. I wiped my tears with my sleeve, grabbed the handles of the cart, and started pushing. Third sister-in-law caught up to help, and old Madame MO said we should all take turns. Pushing the cart on these roads was no easy task. The roads were nothing but dirt, full of potholes. The cart bounced and rattled the whole way. It hadn't rained in over 2 weeks, and the heat was suffocating. When the occasional breeze blew, it just plastered dust onto our sweaty skin. By evening, when we finally stopped, every single person, soldiers included, looked like they'd been rolling in dirt. The MO family women looked at each other in our patched gray rags, filthy skin, and dust-caked embroidered shoes. We looked exactly like a group of beggars. I'd only pushed the cart for about half an hour, but I was completely drained. This body had been pampered its whole life. It had zero stamina. After just one afternoon of walking, I collapsed on the ground and didn't want to get up. Everyone else was the same, backs aching, legs shaking, moaning about the pain. We'd eaten breakfast early that morning, and nothing since. Whatever energy that porridge had given us was long gone. I was so hungry my stomach was eating itself. I had no idea what kind of food we'd be getting. I wasn't expecting much. Then the lead soldier shouted the dinner announcement. Dinner time. Coarse flour buns are free, 1 per person. White flour buns cost 1 tael of silver for 2. No money, no white buns. I nearly laughed out loud. These soldiers had turned meals into a price list, and the markup was highway robbery. MO Hanua tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mother, I don't want to eat coarse buns. She'd never had one in her life, but she'd heard servants say they were so rough they could scrape your throat raw. Old Madame MO didn't have a single coin left. Seeing her daughter still acting picky after everything that had happened, her face hardened instantly. Hanua, if you want white buns, go buy them with your own silver. MO Hanua stared at her mother in disbelief. Mother, where would I get silver? Then eat what you're given. Old Madame Mo loved her daughter, but she didn't have a single coin left after the search. And even though some of the daughters-in-law had money from their families, she wasn't about to beg her juniors for it. Third sister-in-law felt bad for the little sister and offered to buy white buns with her own silver. I stopped her quietly. Third sister-in-law, hold on. Let's see what everyone else does first. I had a whole imperial treasury in my space. Buying buns was nothing. But this was only day one. I didn't know these soldiers or the other prisoners well enough yet. Drawing attention to ourselves with money right now would be foolish. Old Madame Mo agreed with me. The whole family stayed put and watched. The other 4 convicted families were in even worse shape than us. They'd received their sentences at the same time we did, with 0 warning and 0 preparation. The emperor had thrown them in at the last minute. They had absolutely nothing. Normally, escorting exiled prisoners was a lucrative job for soldiers. They'd look the other way when families came to give money during send-offs, because that money would eventually flow into their pockets through bribes. But today, after the soldier announced white buns at 1 tael for 2, not a single person stepped up to buy. The soldiers got angry and cut the free ration from 1 course bun per person to half. The Mo women figured half a bun was enough to survive on. But when we actually got them, we understood the problem. Those black flour buns were hard as rocks. 1 bite could crack a tooth. Mo Hanua started crying again. Mother, I can't bite into this. The sisters-in-law urged old Madame Mo to let them buy white buns. The old woman turned and looked at me, almost instinctively. Even though she barely knew me, she'd figured out I had good judgment. I shook my head gently. Mother, let's wait a little longer. Right on cue, a child's wailing erupted from the CF family group nearby. Second sister-in-law ran over to check on them. Her nephew, 5-year-old Xiaolin, had tried to bite into the hard bun and knocked out a loose baby tooth. The poor boy's lips were smeared with blood. Second sister-in-law adored this child. She'd married into the Mo family and lost her husband to war just 3 months later, never having children of her own. She'd poured all her love into her brother's son. Seeing the boy bleeding and crying, she snapped. She snatched the bun from his hand, threw it on the ground, and marched straight up to the soldiers. We're exiled, not sentenced to death. We have the right to survive. How are we supposed to make it to the Northwest eating buns that are hard as stone and who knows how old? I saw trouble coming before she finished her sentence. One of the soldiers had already pulled out his whip. I got there just in time. The whip came down towards second sister-in-law's body, and I shot forward and caught the end of it in my hand, saving her from the blow. The soldier's face went dark. He'd never had a prisoner, especially a young woman, catch his whip. He started cursing and turned his anger on me. Mo Joy was lying on the cart, hearing everything. I could sense him tensing up, fighting the urge to jump off and intervene. Old Madame Mo noticed too, and quietly pressed his back to keep him still. Then she stood up and walked over to stand beside us. In her mind, Mo family men were brave, and the women had to be just as tough. Second sister-in-law realized her outburst had put me in danger. She threw herself in front of me. I'm the one who spoke. Take it out on me, not my sister-in-law. I was already prepared to fight. But seeing her shield me caught me off guard. I grabbed her collar with one hand and pulled her behind me, then caught the soldier's whip again with my other hand. This time I twisted hard, ripped it right out of his grip, and held it myself. The other soldiers had been sitting around eating white buns in front of us on purpose, enjoying the show. But when they saw their comrade lose his whip to a prisoner, the entertainment was over. They dropped their food, drew their swords, and surrounded the 3 of us, me, second sister-in-law, and old Madame Mo. I didn't back down an inch. You cowards! The men of the Mo family bled and died on battlefields so you could live your comfortable lives. Now my family has been framed, and you're here bullying a group of women, acting tough with your little swords. This is all you're good for. Put any of you on a real battlefield against real enemies, and your heads would roll before you even drew your weapons. Every word hit like a hammer. Old Madame Mo's eyes lit up with fire. Well said. This is exactly what a Mo family woman should be. She swept her gaze across the soldiers' faces. Not all of them were heartless. Some had already quietly lowered their weapons and stepped back, watching uncertainly. We stood there in a tense standoff, the soldiers with their swords drawn, and me holding the whip I'd taken. I wasn't afraid of them, but I didn't want to escalate things. We had a long road ahead, and starting a war with our escorts on day one would only hurt the MO family. The soldiers who hadn't lowered their weapons were clearly shaken by the presence old Madame MO and I were putting out. And then the rest of the MO women gathered behind us, even timid little MO Hanua, standing tall despite their fear. That's when the other 3 convicted families decided to make things worse. Don't let these MO women fool you. They're just trying to talk their way out of a beating. The real heroes were the old Duke and his 8 sons. MO Joy is a traitor who would have shamed them anyway. We're all suffering because of him. Beat them. Don't hold back. The CF family, second sister-in-law's birth family, was stuck in the middle. They resented the MO family too, but they knew this whole mess started because second sister-in-law lost her temper, and we'd stepped in to protect her. After some deliberation, second sister-in-law's father spoke up. I don't care what MO Joy did or didn't do, but these women are widows of heroes who died defending this empire. That fact is beyond question. The other 3 families turned on the CF family instantly, calling the old man senile for defending the people who supposedly ruined them. The whole scene devolved into chaos until a soldier barked at everyone to shut up. The threat of the whip silenced them all. Then something unexpected happened. The lead soldier, Peng Wang, suddenly screamed and grabbed his right leg. A snake! Every soldier drew their weapon and started scanning the ground. I saw my opportunity. The whole time, I'd been hoping to build a decent relationship with these escorts. Having them on our side would make a huge difference for the family's survival. The confrontation earlier had been unavoidable, but now I had a chance to earn some goodwill. I snapped the whip I was still holding. It struck the snake right at its vulnerable spot. This body was weak, so the blow didn't kill it, but it stunned the snake enough to slow it down. That gave the soldiers a target, and one of them rushed in and finished it off with his blade. I might not have killed it myself, but I was the one who found it and pinned it down. Without me, more soldiers could have been bitten. None of them thanked me, of course. Their pride wouldn't allow them to show gratitude to a prisoner, and they probably figured it was just a lucky shot. I didn't care about their reaction. My eyes were on the dead snake. I recognized the species immediately. A banded kite. Extremely venomous. Its neurotoxin attacks the nervous system. The bite doesn't hurt much at first, which is the dangerous part. Within a few hours, the victim starts getting drowsy, loses motor control, eyelids droop, pupils dilate, breathing becomes difficult. Without treatment, it's fatal. I spoke up out of duty. That snake is highly venomous. You should tie a cord below his knee right away to stop the toxin from spreading, and then Peng Wang cut me off. If it were really that poisonous, would I be standing here talking? I just got startled, that's all. The pain's already fading. I'm fine. He stood up to prove his point and told one of his men to keep the dead snake for a late-night snack. I closed my mouth. I'd said what I needed to say. If he didn't believe me, that was his problem. He'd come begging for my help soon enough. No point chasing after someone who doesn't want to be caught. Mother, let's go back, I said. Old Madame Mo called everyone back to their spots. After everything that had just happened, and the fact that I'd been the one to spot and strike the snake, the soldiers decided to let the earlier confrontation slide. Once we sat down, second sister-in-law came over, looking guilty. Thank you for saving me from that whip. We're family. Of course I helped, she sighed. I know I was reckless. I just couldn't stand watching my nephew bleed like that. I noticed second sister-in-law was the impulsive type. I didn't blame her, but I had to say something. Our situation is different now. Before acting, talk to the rest of us first. She nodded quickly. From now on, I'll check with you and Mother before doing anything. I left it at that. No need to lecture further. I stood up and brushed the dust off my clothes. We're surrounded by tall grass. There could be more snakes. I'm going to look around. Mo Joy was listening to everything from his cart. I could feel his curiosity growing. The woman he'd been engaged to for years was supposed to be a spoiled, brainless princess. In one single day, I'd emptied storerooms without a sound, robbed the imperial treasury, killed a general with an unknown weapon, faced down armed soldiers without flinching, identified a venomous snake on sight, and spoken with more force and clarity than any court official. Nothing about me matched anything he thought he knew. Mo Joy had once suspected I wasn't the real Hijiran. But after seeing my parents come to say goodbye, he had to accept I was indeed the genuine daughter of the He family. That must have confused him even more. While he was lost in thought, I was carefully searching through the tall grass. Finding snakes was only one of my goals. Banded krites were extremely venomous, but every part of them was useful. If I could find more, I could extract the venom and make poison for self-defense. The other families had seen the snake incident too, and now their women and children were screaming and crying about more snakes possibly lurking nearby. The braver men grabbed thick branches and started poking through the grass close to their sleeping area. The soldiers didn't stop them. They'd be sleeping here too, so safer ground benefited everyone. The only rule was that prisoners had to stay within sight. But my real purpose for being out there was something else. Earlier, during a confrontation with the soldiers, I'd noticed medicinal herbs growing in the surrounding grass. On this long road ahead, people would inevitably get sick, headaches, fevers, infections. I couldn't keep pulling modern medicine from my space every time. People would ask questions. But if I had a visible supply of herbal medicine that everyone saw me collect, I'd have a legitimate cover story. Even if the herbs weren't enough for a particular illness, taking modern drugs from my space afterward would seem more reasonable. Gathering herbs slowed me down, and the sisters-in-law noticed I'd fallen behind. First sister-in-law got worried and came to check on me. The others followed, and soon even Mo Hanua joined them. They found me holding a huge armful of plants in the fold of my clothes. Ninth sister-in-law, were you looking for snakes? Why are you picking so much grass? Mo Hanua asked. These are medicinal herbs. We might need them on the road. Her eyes lit up. These are really medicine. I picked one up and explained. This is bitter greens, good for clearing heat and removing toxins. And this one is plantain. It treats illness but can also be cooked and eaten. Mo Hanua was fascinated. She memorized everything I said and offered to help collect more. The sisters-in-law listened carefully too and joined in. By the time the soldiers called everyone back, we hadn't found any more snakes, but 10 Mo family women returned carrying armfuls of herbs. Mo Hanua ran straight to old Madame Mo, proudly showing off her haul. The old woman patted her daughter's head fondly. Your ninth sister-in-law is a wise one. Learn from her. Before dark, the sisters-in-law and Mo Hanua sorted and cleaned the herbs the way I taught them. The other families watched with disgust. The Mo family must be starving, dragging back piles of weeds to eat. They'd better hope those aren't poisonous. If they are, even better. That would be revenge for what the Mo family did to us. They said it quietly enough that our side didn't hear. I'd just finished laying out the cleaned herbs on flat ground to dry when shouting erupted from the soldiers' camp.
Chief.
What's wrong? Help. The chief can't breathe. Everyone looked over. Several soldiers were crowded around Peng Wang, who was on the ground struggling for air. Was that snake actually venomous? The second someone said it, every soldier remembered my warning. The one Peng Wang had laughed off. One of them made the call instantly. Bring the chief to that sharp-tongued Mo family woman. Now, they grabbed Peng Wang and ran toward us. Old Madame Mo heard everything. She looked at me with concern. Hijiran, be careful. Don't overextend yourself. She'd seen me collecting herbs and figured I knew some medicine. But treating a venomous snakebite was far beyond basic knowledge. If Peng Wang died, these soldiers might blame me to cover themselves. Don't worry, mother. I won't act recklessly. The soldiers arrived carrying Peng Wang. One of them barked, "Tell us again how to treat the snake venom." I looked at them calmly and spoke at my own pace. The method I described only works immediately after the bite. That window has passed. Then what do we do now? The soldier was panicking. I knew banded krite venom was slow-acting. The man wasn't going to die in the next few minutes. So I walked toward Peng Wang deliberately slowly, making them sweat. Move faster. What's your plan? I stopped walking entirely. You're the ones asking me for help. Is this how you ask? One soldier named Zhang Qing reached for his whip out of pure habit, ready to threaten me. Another soldier, Zhou Laoba, grabbed his arm. The chief's life comes first. Zhang Qing froze, glared at me, but said nothing. Zhou Laoba stood up. Name your conditions. I didn't rush to answer. As a professional doctor, the first thing I needed to do was assess my patient. Even though I knew it was banded kite venom, I wasn't going to make promises before properly assessing the patient. I crouched beside Peng Wang, checked his pupils, felt his pulse, and examined the bite wound on his leg. His condition was bad. If they'd waited another half-hour to come find me, he'd have been beyond saving. But luckily, my medical office had several vials of the right antivenom serum stored inside. This man's luck hadn't run out yet. After my examination, I stood up calmly and walked back to my pile of sorted herbs. I picked out a stalk of gentian root, the bitterest herb I had, and brought it back. I handed it to Zhang Qing, the soldier who'd been yelling at me earlier. The gentian root wasn't actually the right treatment for snake venom, but I had a petty side, and he'd earned this. Chew this up. We'll need it as a poultice for the wound. He scowled. Why can't I just crush it between rocks? You'd lose all the medicinal juice that way, I said flatly. He was suspicious. You're not trying to poison me as payback for earlier, are you? I rolled my eyes. If you're too scared, don't do it. Your chief's life isn't my problem. Zhou Laoba urged him to just listen to me. Zhang Qing screwed up his face like he was marching to his death and slowly lifted the herb toward his mouth. That's when a young woman came sprinting over from the Li family's group. Officers, don't listen to Hejiran. She doesn't know anything about medicine. Don't let her fool you. I narrowed my eyes and searched through the original girl's memories. I recognized her instantly. Li Roer, the Li family's illegitimate daughter. The only person the original Hejiran had considered a close friend. And a big reason the original girl had been so terrified of marrying into the Mo family. Li Roer had spent months filling her head with talk about how every woman who married a Mo man became a widow within years. She'd hammered the word, widow, into every conversation until the original Hejiran was paralyzed with fear, which led to her parents drugging her, which led to her death. Li Roer's hands weren't clean in that. And now she was running over to sabotage me in front of everyone. Some best friend. I looked at her coolly. Li Roer, since you say I don't know medicine, why don't you treat Officer Pring yourself? I turned and walked away. She stood there stunned. The old Hejiran had followed her every word like an obedient puppy. This version of me clearly threw her off. Zhou Laoba snapped at her. Who are you? Why are you here causing trouble? She recovered quickly. Officer, I'm telling the truth. I spent a lot of time with Hejiran, and she never once showed any medical knowledge. Please don't trust her. The soldiers wavered. But when they looked at Peng Wang barely clinging to life, they had no other options. Out here in the wilderness, there were no doctors to call. After huddling together, they decided to let me continue. A desperate gamble was better than nothing. Zhang Qing shouted after me. Hejiran, come back and treat the poison. I stopped and turned around, but my eyes went to Li Roer. I smiled faintly. Li Roer just told everyone I'm a fraud. Aren't you worried I'll kill your chief? Zhang Qing's face darkened, but this time his anger was aimed at Li Roer. Who told you to open your mouth? You're a criminal's family member. You don't get to speak here. He ripped the whip from his belt and lashed it across her before she could even react. She screamed. A woman in her 30s, her maid, came running over and threw herself in front of Li Roer, begging the soldier to forgive the girl's foolishness. Li Roer was glaring at me through her tears, blaming me for everything. If I hadn't made those comments, the soldier wouldn't have hit her. I caught her hateful stare from the corner of my eye and got an idea. Officer Zhang, I said casually, you were worried about the herb being poisonous, right? He nodded dumbly.
I glansde at Li Roer.
Actually, anyone can chew it. Doesn't have to be you. Zhang Qing understood instantly. I could even see a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. He hadn't thought of that. Without a moment's hesitation, he shoved the gentian root into Li Roer's hands. Chew this up unless you want another taste of the whip. She wanted to refuse, but she didn't dare. With everyone watching, she put the herb in her mouth. Her face twisted into a knot immediately. It was brutally bitter. Zhang Qing nearly gagged just watching her. She chewed it to a pulp, spat the green mush into her palm, and asked with a warped expression if it was enough. Zhang Qing looked at me. I gave it a casual glance and shrugged. That'll do. I went back to Peng Wang and had the soldiers roll up his pant leg, so the bite wound was fully exposed. I tore off a piece of his shirt, asked Zhang Qing for his water flask, soaked the cloth, and carefully cleaned the wound. It wasn't sanitary, but with all these eyes on me, I couldn't pull alcohol swabs from my space. This would have to do for now. While I cleaned the wound, I squeezed out as much poison blood as I could, then wiped everything down. Once that was done, I turned to Li Rower, applied the chewed herb onto the wound. She was standing there in a daze, completely zoned out. Zhang Qing yelled at her to move. She looked at me, then at the wound, and whimpered that she was too scared. Zhang Qing was losing patience. He would have done it himself if the mashed-up green paste in her palm wasn't so disgusting. He barked at her to remember her place as a prisoner and do as she was told. Her maid, a woman called Zhu, stepped forward trembling. "Officer, my young miss is timid. Let me do it instead." She took the paste from Li Rower's hand and carefully spread it over Peng Wang's wound. Li Rower called out, "Auntie," in protest. Her whole plan had been to act scared, so the soldiers would force me to do the dirty work instead. She was furious that her maid had volunteered and robbed her of the chance to humiliate me. Zhou Laoba caught Li Rower staring at me with cold, hateful eyes. The look disgusted him.
"You two, stop standing around.
Get back where you belong." Zhu grabbed Li Rower, and they scurried away. The herbal poultice was just for show. The real cure was the anti-venom serum in my space. But with soldiers hovering everywhere, I couldn't find a moment to pull it out. Zhang Qing was already getting impatient again. "Do you actually know how to treat snake venom? The medicine's been on for a while, and he's not getting any better." The other soldiers started doubting me too. Maybe Li Roa was right. Maybe I was a fraud. I was getting anxious myself. Peng Wang's breathing was getting worse by the minute. If I didn't act soon, no one could save him. I had to use the dumbest trick in the book. There's one final step to the treatment. But what? Zhang Qing jumped in before I could finish. I need to use a secret technique passed down by my master. It can't be performed with people watching. Then hurry up and do it. "Officer, I just said it's a secret technique." I mentally cursed him for being so dense. A younger soldier tugged Zhang Qing's sleeve and whispered, "She means nobody's allowed to watch while she treats the chief." Zhang Qing finally understood, but now he was torn. None of the soldiers wanted to leave their unconscious leader alone with the prisoner. What if I did something to him? I watched these grown men dithering and lost my patience. "I'll give you the time it takes to burn one stick of incense to make up your minds. After that, even I can't save him." I turned to walk away. Zhou Laoba called me back. "Treat the chief. Whatever happens, I'll take responsibility." The other soldiers all looked at him with obvious relief. They knew Peng Wang was dying and I was his only chance, but nobody wanted to be the one to make the call. Now that Zhou Laoba had stepped up, they all kept quiet. I looked around. There was nothing nearby except a few large trees, no buildings, no walls. Luckily, it was getting dark. If I was careful, nobody would see what I was doing. "Carry him behind that thickest tree over there." They moved fast, placing Peng Wang exactly where I pointed. "Now turn around and walk 30 steps away." I didn't even look back as I said it. I listened to their footsteps growing fainter until they stopped. Then I scanned every direction to make sure no one could see me. I pulled the anti-venom serum and a syringe from my space. Looking at the vial in my hand, I felt a pang. This was a limited edition, high-concentration serum. The latest formula with extraction ingredients, so rare they were nearly impossible to obtain. There was no market price because none were available for sale. I'd gotten my hands on these few vials through pure luck and had kept them in my office refrigerator, too precious to part with. Peng Wang was one lucky man. Without me, he'd be dead. And if my space didn't have the regeneration function, I never would have used this on him. Intravenous injection would work faster, but the conditions didn't allow for that. Intramuscular would have to do. Behind the tree, I mixed the serum with saline at the right ratio, rolled up Peng Wang's sleeve, disinfected the spot, inserted the needle, pushed the medicine, and pulled the needle out, all in one smooth sequence. I stashed the packaging and syringe back in my space, then watched his breathing closely. After about 5 minutes, the change was dramatic. The bluish tint on his face from oxygen deprivation started fading. His breathing steadied and deepened. I estimated he'd regain consciousness in an hour or two. I stayed to observe a bit longer, wanting to make sure he was fully stable before calling the soldiers back. Meanwhile, those soldiers were practically jumping out of their skin with anxiety. Zhang Qing finally couldn't take it anymore. "He's Jiran. How's the chief doing? In my past life, I hated two kinds of patients' families, the ones who questioned my skills and the ones who couldn't stop rushing me." Zhang Qing managed to be both. "Stop yelling. If you don't trust me, go find another doctor. That was just who I was. Soldiers or not, nobody was going to rush my work." Zhang Qing's temper flared again. He reached for his whip out of pure habit. A prisoner had just talked back to him, and his instinct was to lash out. Zhou Laba grabbed him and told him to calm down, but Zhang Qing tried to push past him. From the cart, Mo Joy was watching everything. The moment he saw Zhang Qing reaching for the whip, he tensed up, ready to blow his cover and jump off to protect me. Whatever our relationship was, I was still his wife, and he wasn't going to let anyone hurt me. The Mo women hadn't relaxed for a second since I'd gone to treat Peng Wang. They'd even forgotten how hungry they were. Old Madame Mo noticed Mo Joy's chest heaving with agitation and quietly leaned close to the cart. "Don't move." He didn't want to worry his mother, so he forced himself to stay still. But I could tell later, he'd been ready to throw everything away to come to my side. Then I stepped out from behind the tree and walked toward the soldiers with a calm face, as if Zhang Qing and his whip didn't exist. Zhou Laoba held Zhang Qing's arm and asked me directly, "How's the chief?" I'd already figured these two out. Zhang Qing was a hothead, simple-minded, all muscle, no brain. Zhou Laoba was the opposite, steady, thoughtful, someone worth talking to. So I ignored Zhang Qing entirely and answered Zhou Laoba. "Relax. He's not going to die." Zhang Qing yanked free and sprinted behind the tree, shouting that he'd beat me to death if I was lying. I didn't even give him a glance. Zhou Laoba stayed where he was. "You're sure the poison's been neutralized?" "I'm sure. And I can tell you he'll wake up within the hour." He studied my face and saw nothing but confidence. "Good. Once the chief wakes up, he won't forget what you've done." That was exactly what I'd been working toward. But I was smart enough to know that until Peng Wang actually woke up and confirmed it himself, nobody else's promises meant anything. Great. I'm thirsty, exhausted, and sleepy. I'm going to rest now. I walked back toward the Mo family. Before I'd taken more than a few steps, every single one of them rushed over to meet me. Fifth sister-in-law grabbed my arm to help me along. Old Madame Mo asked me the same question everyone was thinking. "Did you really cure the snake venom?" I understood her doubt. Before the wedding, she'd done her research on me. Everything she'd heard said I was a sheltered, noble girl who barely left the house. Nothing about medicine. But since meeting me, she'd seen things that didn't match that picture at all. My quick thinking, my courage, my fighting ability. If she hadn't seen my parents come to say goodbye with her own eyes, she'd have questioned whether I was really Hijiran at all. I'd already prepared an explanation for exactly this moment. Of all my secrets, my medical skills were the only ones I could bring into the open. So I needed a believable story. "Mother, when I was young, I found an old medical text left behind by a master physician. You know I never liked going out much. I spent most of my days at home studying that book to pass the time. Over the years, I memorized and mastered everything in it. Practicing medicine isn't difficult for me." Old Madame Mo knew the original Hijiran had indeed been a homebody. The story fit perfectly. She didn't question it. "If you truly have medical skills, then I'm relieved." I was genuinely exhausted by now. I looked around. Nothing but grass and trees. The soldiers hadn't let us take a single thing during the raid. No blankets, no mats, nothing. I had a down comforter in my space from my past life, but I obviously couldn't pull that out in front of everyone. I thought of an old saying, "The sky is my blanket, the earth is my bed, the mountains are my pillow." What a life. Mo Hanua started whimpering again. Mother, I'm hungry and tired. What do we do? Old Madame Mo was struggling too. Not just Mo Hanua. Every woman here had grown up in comfortable households. Sleeping hungry under the open sky, we'd all be sick by morning. She stroked her daughter's messy hair. Hanua, this is only our first day.
This is our life now.
You need to learn to adapt. She had to stay strong in front of the younger women. If the matriarch broke down, everyone's spirit would shatter. I leaned against Mo Joy's cart, turning things over in my mind. Everything depended on what kind of man Pengwang was. If he was grateful, he'd treat the Mo family better after waking up, and tonight might not be so miserable. If he turned out to be the ungrateful type who forgot favors the moment he was healthy again, then everything I'd done was wasted, and I'd have to find another way to improve our situation. I just wanted him to wake up fast, and I really hoped he'd be decent. Then, from the soldiers' camp, I heard cheering and laughter. The chief's awake. Chief, how are you feeling? Chief, you scared us half to death. Everyone looked toward the soldiers' camp. They were crowded around Pengwang, fussing over him. He was still weak, but he could talk. What happened to me? He asked Zhou Laoba. You were poisoned by the snake, Chief. He thought back to before he blacked out, the numbness spreading from his leg, the tightness in his chest, then nothing. He pinched his own face to make sure he was really alive. Who cured me? Zhou Laoba pointed in our direction. Mo Joy's new wife. He's Iran. I saw the look that crossed Pengwang's face when he heard my name, guilt. He remembered brushing off my warning and snapping at me for it. He looked around at his supplies and made a decision. Old 8, take 2 white flour buns to each person in the Mo family, and ask if the woman has any requests. As long as they're reasonable, grant them. Zhou Laoba walked over carrying a bag. The chief says you each get 2 white buns. Everyone swallowed hard. We were starving, but nobody reached for the bag. They all looked at me first. I was hungry too, but I held steady. I knew Zhou Laoba had more to say. The chief says you saved his life. If you have conditions, name them now. The sisters-in-law's eyes lit up. Maybe things were about to get better for us. I understood immediately what this might mean. Pengwang probably wanted to settle the debt right here, right now, pay me back in one shot, so he wouldn't owe us anything going forward. If that was the case, I had to choose wisely. I looked at old Madame Mo first. I wasn't going to overstep my elders. She appreciated the gesture. You saved him. The conditions are yours to set. Just don't be greedy, smart woman. Leave room for the future. I agreed completely. Officer, we only have one request. When we pass through the next town, let us go shopping for some supplies. That was enough. I had more silver than I could ever spend sitting in my space. All I needed was access to a market to buy what we needed for daily life. Zhou Laoba looked surprised. He clearly expected me to ask for more.
Done.
Tomorrow at noon we'll pass through Yunlai County. We'll be restocking there. I'll send someone with you to shop. Thank you. He paused. Nothing else. I hadn't planned on being greedy, but since he was offering, I thought of one more thing. I'd like that dead snake from earlier, he frowned. What does a woman need a snake for? Many parts of a snake can be used as medicine, I said. I wasn't about to tell him I wanted to extract the venom for poison.
Fine.
Agreed. He left and reported everything to Pengwang. Then he came back carrying several water flasks and the dead banded kite. These flasks were supposed to be sold to the prisoners, but none of them have any money, so they'd just go to waste.
Take them.
And we've got extra white buns that'll spoil in this heat. I'll bring you more in the morning. He dropped everything in front of me and walked away. I handed out 2 buns per person. White flour buns were decent, but eating them dry with no side dish was rough. Then I remembered Father's bundle. I hadn't opened it yet, which meant nobody knew what was inside. I reached one hand into the bundle while sending my mind into my space. I had sliced braised beef in the refrigerator, bought recently, already cut up. The plastic packaging couldn't come out where people could see it, and I didn't have any period-appropriate oil paper handy. So I just grabbed a big handful of beef with my bare hand and pulled it out through the bundle. Special circumstances called for special measures. Hygiene standards could wait. Mother, sisters-in-law, little sister, this is braised beef my parents brought me today. Eat it with the buns. Their eyes went wide at the sight of meat. But years of proper upbringing made them hesitate. Ladies didn't grab food with their hands like that. Old Madame Mo broke through the awkwardness. Enough with the manners. We're not noble ladies anymore. It's time we accepted that. She was the first to see reality for what it was, and she was telling everyone else it was okay to let go of the old rules. With old Madame Mo's permission, the sisters-in-law and Mo Hanua dug into the braised beef without any more hesitation. Mother's right. We're not noble ladies anymore. Filling our stomachs is all that matters. Manners? I'm throwing them out, seventh sister-in-law declared. When you're truly starving, everything tastes amazing. But this braised beef was genuinely delicious, better than anything they'd eaten in their old lives. Watching these once elegant women sitting on the ground wolfing down food, I reminded them to slow down. Don't rush. There's more in the bundle. We can get more if this isn't enough. My space regenerated everything, so I had an unlimited supply. Old Madame Mo told me to save what my parents had given me, but I just reached in and pulled out another big handful for everyone. She didn't argue after that. She loved it too much. The other 4 families were practically green with envy watching us eat white buns and braised beef, while they gnawed on rock-hard black buns with no water. They were furious, but the whipping from earlier had taught them to keep their mouths shut. They just stared at us with burning eyes. We felt the hostile gazes but followed old Madame Mo's lead, kept our heads down and ate. After everyone was full, old Madame Mo whispered to me that we needed to get food to Mo Joy somehow. I'd already thought of that. I told her I'd wait until everyone was asleep. Mo Joy was lying on the cart smelling the braised beef, swallowing his saliva over and over. But he was supposed to be unconscious, so he couldn't risk breaking character for a bite of food. Old Madame Mo told everyone to find a spot and rest. That's when reality hit. We had nothing.
No blankets, no mats, no pillows.
Just the bare ground. Mo Hanua whimpered about sleeping like this. Old Madame Mo was firm. We're alive. That's already more than we could ask for. Don't expect anything more. Mo Hanua's tears fell, but she held in her complaints. Then her mother said something that cut deeper. If you can't handle this small hardship, you don't deserve to be called a child of the Mo family. Being a Mo was the thing Mo Hanua was proudest of. She wiped her tears immediately. Mo family people aren't afraid of suffering. I'm not afraid either. She curled up beside her mother and went still. Old Madame Mo turned her face away so she wouldn't have to watch her daughter suffer. I leaned against Mo Joy's cart. Sleeping outdoors was nothing new. I'd done it plenty of times during field missions in my past life. This didn't bother me at all. The sisters-in-law huddled close together on the ground without complaint. Everyone was so exhausted from the day's march that they fell asleep almost immediately. I stayed awake, just resting with my eyes closed. When I was about to check if everyone was truly asleep, I felt second sister-in-law sit up and creep over to me. Ninth sister-in-law, are you awake? She whispered. I am. What is it? Even in the moonlight, I could see her face was conflicted. She was clearly about to ask for something. Could I have a white bun? She was nervous, stuttering and fidgeting with her clothes. I knew right away what she wanted it for, her little nephew in the CF family camp. The 5-year-old boy who'd lost a tooth on the hard bun. But I wasn't the type to hand things out blindly. Those families were hostile toward us. Even though the CF family hadn't cursed at us like the others, their hatred was obvious. You didn't eat enough? I played dumb. She shook her head quickly. No, it's for my nephew. When I didn't hand anything over right away, she started explaining. My father's family and the Mo family, there must be some misunderstanding. There were too many people around during the day to talk about it. I thought I'd bring my nephew a bun and ask my father what actually happened. She had a point. The child was innocent. Adult grudges had nothing to do with a 5-year-old. And this was also a good chance to find out why those families hated us so much. I pulled out a white bun and reached into my bundle for 2 slices of beef. Here, second sister-in-law. Take all of this. Her eyes went wide at the beef. She thanked me over and over.
Go on.
Find out what you can. She slipped away into the dark. I scanned the area. The soldiers had spread out, Each family group watched by one guard on night duty. The one assigned to us was Zhou Laoba. He must have seen second sister-in-law heading toward the Xie family, but he didn't stop her. He was letting it slide on purpose. Even though Zhou Laoba was clearly looking the other way for second sister-in-law, I couldn't just openly feed Mo Joy. His unconscious act had to fool everyone. But the man hadn't eaten all day, hadn't been able to relieve himself, and his wounds needed checking. Even iron would break under those conditions. I had to get creative, even if it meant sacrificing some dignity. I pulled a military green sheet from my space under cover of the bundle, then climbed onto the cart, muttering loudly enough for Zhou Laoba to hear that the ground was too cold and the cart was more comfortable. I lay down next to Mo Joy and pulled the sheet over both of us. I felt him freeze the moment he sensed my body heat. If there'd been a mirror, I'm sure his face was bright red. He had no idea what I was planning, so he just lay there with his eyes shut, trying to stay calm. Old Madame Mo noticed too. She saw two figures wrapped tightly together under the sheet and couldn't help thinking her new daughter-in-law really must care about her son. Even now, she wanted to sleep beside him. She started mentally planning when to have us consummate the marriage and start producing grandchildren for the Mo bloodline. Zhou Laoba had a less flattering interpretation. He figured I was just another attention-hungry wife climbing into her unconscious husband's bed. He glanced over once to make sure we weren't up to anything suspicious, then looked away. Once I confirmed nobody was watching, I slipped 2 white buns and a big handful of braised beef into Mo Joy's hands under the sheet. I also gave him some alcohol cotton balls and a small bottle of Yunnan Baiyao. I whispered directly into his ear. Move fast. Find somewhere hidden to eat and treat your wounds. I'll put something in your spot so the soldiers won't notice you're gone. He understood instantly, a shell game. The moment he rolled off the cart, he hit the ground without making a single sound. His lightfoot skills were truly incredible. The second he was gone, I pulled a folded cotton quilt from my space and placed it where he'd been lying. In the dark, under the sheet, nobody could possibly tell it wasn't a person. While he was away, I checked the purse my father had given me. Inside was a stack of silver notes totaling 3,000 taels, plus about 20 taels in loose silver. For an ordinary family in this era, that kind of money would last generations. My parents in this life truly loved their daughter. Mo Joy returned after about half an hour, quick and silent as a shadow. I swapped the quilt out the instant I heard him, and only exhaled once he was settled back in position. How are the wounds? I whispered. Not bleeding anymore, he whispered back. Then after a pause, thank you for everything you've done for me and my family. I didn't respond. Now wasn't the time for pleasantries. I was debating whether to stay on the cart when second sister-in-law came back. She tiptoed over and was confused not to see me on the ground. When I sat up from the cart, she saw me next to Mo Joy under the same sheet and immediately wanted to slap herself. I'm so sorry, you two are newlyweds. I shouldn't have interrupted. We can talk tomorrow. I could tell she'd completely misread the situation. Second sister-in-law, I was only up here to sneak food to my husband. That's all. Everyone in the family knew Mo Joy was faking the coma, so there was no need to hide it from her. She turned red with embarrassment at her own assumption. I found out why they hate us, she said, getting right to it. She knew Mo Joy would be listening too. Tell me everything, she sighed. My brother said their family had no warning at all. Soldiers showed up with a decree saying Mo Joy had confessed to treason and had personally named the Xie family as accomplices. They also produced evidence of my father taking bribes years ago, twice small amounts. My family believes the bribery charges alone weren't serious enough for exile. The real reason they were punished was because Mo Joy supposedly confessed that they'd committed treason together with him. I thought it over carefully. Mo Joy would never do something like that. He hadn't even known about his own family's raid until I told him. How could he have confessed and named accomplices? There was only one explanation. The Emperor had been looking for excuses to get rid of these families. He used Mo Joy's case as a convenient vehicle, frame them all together, eliminate political enemies in one sweep, and as a bonus, surround Mo Joy with people who hated him for the entire exile journey. The other 3 families were probably in the same boat, even though we hadn't heard their specific stories yet. Mo Joy was thinking along the same lines. He knew these officials and their dirty secrets better than I did, especially Feng Chuanzhou, the one whose family had been shouting the loudest. Mo Joy knew for a fact that man had once genuinely offended the emperor. Mo Joy lightly tapped my finger to get my attention. "I'll tell you about those families when we have time," he whispered. Since he already had it figured out, I didn't need to keep overthinking it. "Fine," I said simply. Whether he told me or not didn't matter much. My main goal was keeping him alive through the exile. Second sister-in-law said goodnight and went back to her spot. I should have gotten off the cart too, but if I left too quickly after climbing up, Zhou Laoba might get suspicious. So I stayed put. Mo Joy shifted over to give me more room. I was exhausted from the day, but couldn't fall asleep. Mo Joy sensed it. "Can't sleep, because of what second sister-in-law said. Partly, I didn't really know why I was awake. Maybe the unfamiliar environment, maybe everything weighing on my mind. But I didn't feel like explaining. Mo Joy took my vague answer at face value and started talking. The He family and the Li family both had issues with me. Since I was wide awake anyway, I figured I'd listen. "What kind of issues?" He Ziyuan used to be the Minister of War. When I was commanding the army, he deliberately skimmed military grain supplies for personal profit. I reported him to the emperor, who ordered an investigation. But strangely, the punishment was light. They only demoted him from minister to vice minister. That clicked something in my head. So the emperor was already planning to take down the Mo family back then? He kept He Ziyuan around on purpose, saving him as a thorn in your side for later. Mo Joy was surprised I'd figured that out so quickly. Apparently, it had taken him most of the day to piece together the same conclusion. I was getting into it now. "What about the Li family?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "My conflict with the Li family started because of Li Rower. That caught my attention." "What was your relationship with her?" I searched through the original girl's memories for any mention of Mo Joy from Li Rower. I dug and dug until my head hurt, but found nothing. Li Rower had never once mentioned Mo Joy to the original He Ziyuan. That was very telling. "We had no relationship," Mo Joy said flatly. "Then why did you say the conflict with the Li family started with her?" He explained everything. Li Rower's carriage had gone out of control on the street one day, and Mo Joy happened to be there. He stopped the horse purely out of kindness and thought nothing of it. The next day, her father Li Liang showed up at the duke's estate with gifts, thanking Mo Joy for saving his daughter's life. Then he offered to send Li Rower to be Mo Joy's concubine. Mo Joy refused on the spot, saying he was already engaged to me and that Mo family rules forbade men from taking concubines. Li Liang didn't show any reaction at the time. But 3 days later, Mo Joy left the estate and found Li Rower waiting outside the gates. Her 2 maids blocked his path. Li Rower claimed they'd already been physically intimate and that he had to take responsibility for her. There had been zero contact between them when he stopped her horse.
It was a blatant lie.
Mo Joy didn't bother explaining or giving her any face. He just rode off. After that, Li Liang opposed him on everything in court, contradicting whatever Mo Joy said, finding fault wherever possible. The grudge was born entirely from that rejection. Hearing all this, I finally understood Li Rower's game. She deliberately befriended the original He Ziyuan and spent months poisoning her mind against the Mo family. Every woman who marries and becomes a widow, why waste your youth? Over and over until the original girl was terrified of the marriage. Li Rower's plan was to make the original girl break off the engagement so she could swoop in and marry Mo Joy herself. "This all happened at the beginning of the year, didn't it?" I asked. "You knew." I told him everything. How Li Rower had relentlessly talked the original He Ziyuan out of the marriage, and how the timing lined up perfectly with Mo Joy's rejection of her. His dark eyes hardened. I didn't expect a young woman could be so calculating. Truly despicable. "She is," I agreed. "She pretended to care about me while scheming behind my back. The moment we were exiled, she dropped the act completely. I had nothing but contempt for people like that." Mo Joy seemed to think I was upset about his connection to Li Rower and tried to change the subject to lighten the mood. "I've read your father's letter,"